Chapter 2355. Jianchen stowed the medallion away and continued forwards. Finally, he set foot in the sacred hall that stood above the clouds. When he arrived, many hallowed Saint Masters had already gathered on the square of the sacred hall. Most of these hallowed Saint Masters were the divine King of Light, Lords of Peaks. Only a few people like Jianchen, who had not even condensed a 7-colored soul core and had come here with special identities. Even though there was a sea of people, it was extraordinarily quiet. No one made a ruckus. There was not even a whisper of discussion. All the hallowed Saint Masters felt a sense of longing towards the sacred hall. Senior brother, why are you here as well? Strange, how did you get up here? At this moment, Baiyu had arrived by Jianchen's side at some unknown time. Her large, pretty eyes widened as she asked in surprise through a communication technique. Baiyu had already become the disciple of an elder, so her identity was special. Naturally, she had the right to enter the sacred hall. I naturally have my methods. Jianchen smiled mysteriously and replied through a communication technique as well. Why are you being so mysterious? Senior brother, tell me, how did you get up here? Didn't the guards outside stop you? Baiyu became more and more curious as she pestered Jianchen to ask him. The time has come. I announce that the competition for the position of chosen saint has officially begun. At this moment, a great voice rang out. An old elder stood on a huge ring in the center of the square as he spoke with his ancient voice. This is Elder Muzhong. I heard from my master that Elder Muzhong is the most senior elder in our sacred hall. He is the most prestigious person among all the elders, and his status is only second to the 8 vice leaders. At this moment, Baiyu stopped asking questions and explained to Jianchen. At this moment, Elder Muzhong continued, in the past competitions for the position of chosen saint, the 8 retainers were only decided after the position of chosen saint was decided. However, after the discussion between the esteemed leader and the 8 vice leaders, some changes have occurred. The 5 candidates will each choose 9 protectors as their temporary retainers. Once the position of chosen saint is decided, the person who obtains the position of chosen saint will retain the 9 retainers, while the remaining 4 will lose the right to have 9 protectors. However, due to the fact that Donglin Yanxue is participating in the competition for the position of chosen saint, one of the 9 protectors is still missing. As a result, the spot will be chosen from the hallowed Saint Masters present. Next, the elders will nominate the protectors. The death of the Lord of the Snowfall Peak was just too close to the competition for the position of chosen saint. In such a short amount of time, it was already too late to decide on a protector. As a result, the final spot could only be chosen temporarily. With that, the huge square immediately fell silent once again. All the divine King of Light gathered there said nothing. However, from the burning desire in many people's eyes, it was quite evident that they were filled with eagerness towards this spot. The Tower of Radiance was a holy land in the hearts of all radiant Saint Masters. It was irresistibly tempting to all the divine King of Light and even the elders. However, the Tower of Radiance only opened once in a very long time. Even when it opened, they did not have the right to enter. As a result, becoming a retainer of the chosen saint was a shortcut to entering the Tower of Radiance. They naturally looked forward to this spot. They all yearned for it. As soon as Elder Muzhong finished speaking, the eyes of the elders around him flickered with light. I suggest that the Lord of the Broken Blade Peak, Qingqing, be the 9th protector of Donglin Yanxue. At this moment, an elder finally made a suggestion. I suggest that the Lord of the Black Sun Peak, Lu Chang, take up the final spot. Why don't we get the Lord of the Verdant Peak, Yun Wantian, to be the 9th protector? A few elders all made suggestions. The people they recommended were all Lords of Peaks, and most of them had mid-7-colored soul cores. Following that, many of the elders of the Sacred Hall began a war of words over who would be the final candidate. All of them were doing their best to fight for it. When Mu Shui, Donglin Shue's master, heard these people's suggestions, she became rather troubled. All of the people they recommended were radiant saint kings. If she really followed her disciple's request at a time like this and let a disciple with a lower cultivation become the ninth protector, it would become a joke. After hesitating slightly, Mu Shui said, "Everyone, why don't we let Donglin Shui make the decision for the final spot?" Even the respected elder Mu Zhong could not bear to watch on as the elders argued. He immediately agreed with Mu Shui. "Yeah, let's listen to Donglin Shui's opinion. It's a pity that Teacher Han Xian's wounds haven't healed, or the final spot would definitely be his." Bai Yu sighed gently as she listened to the debate between the elders. She said to Jianqin through a communication technique, "Senior brother, who do you think the final spot will go to?" Bai Yu continued to ask. Jianqin smiled mysteriously when he heard that. He said, "Is there even a need to ask? It'll definitely be your senior brother." "TCH, how is that possible? If you were the divine king of radiant light, you might have a chance, but your current cultivation is even lower than mine. It won't be your turn no matter what." Bai Yu glanced at Jianqin. Jianqin smiled faintly and did not explain. At this moment, Donglin Shui, one of the 5 candidates, stepped onto the stage as well. She had been below the ring before, so she could clearly see the elders arguing over the final spot. She could not help but secretly feel troubled. Many of the elders were interested in the final spot. They all wanted to take the spot and leave it for the person closest to them. If she suggested giving the spot to a disciple who only possessed a one-colored soul core at a time like this, there was no need to even think about it. She would be collectively opposed by all the elders. Even if her master spoke up for her, she would not be able to change anything. This was because she had underestimated just how much the elders valued the spot. Donglin Shui bowed towards the elders before hesitating slightly. In the end, she forced herself to say, "I hope the final spot can go to Junior Changyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak." Bai Yu immediately became stunned when she heard what Donglin Shui had said. Her mouth hung agape as disbelief filled her face. On the other hand, many of the peak masters standing below had strange expressions on their faces. Changyang's name was well known among the mountains below the sacred hall. As a matter of fact, even many of the lords knew about him. On the other hand, the temple elders on the stage all looked puzzled. The Soaring Clouds Peak? Isn't the lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak Han Xen? Who's this Changyang? An elder asked in doubt. He had never heard of Changyang before. Afterwards, a peak lord immediately took the initiative to report everything he knew about Changyang to the elders through communication techniques without missing a single detail. "I was wondering who this Changyang was. So he's actually a low-level disciple. Nonsense, this is nonsense. The protectors are all hallowed saint masters with 7 colored soul cores. What's a mere 1-colored soul core disciple doing here? The protector's mission is to protect the candidates participating in the trial. If a low-level disciple with a 1-colored soul core becomes a protector, who's going to be protecting who?" Chapter 2356. Donglin Shui felt powerless as she listened to the voices of objection. With so many elders objecting, even if her master recommended Changyang, it would be hopeless under these circumstances. After all, Changyang's cultivation was just too weak. He only had a 1-colored soul core. It was impossible for him to gain the attention and support of a single elder with such a weak cultivation. If he became a protector with such a cultivation, would the candidate not have to protect him instead? Donglin Shui sighed gently. She had already done her best. She had done everything she could, but the final outcome was not something she could change. When she thought about the pure soul Changyang had given her, Donglin Shui could not help but feel deeply ashamed. She was rather ashamed to face Changyang. This was because she had never thought that something would happen to the chosen saint this time. In the past battles for the position of Son of Saint, the 9 retainers would be chosen by the Son of Saint himself after the Son of Saint was decided. This was because that was the right of the chosen saint. In this year's chosen saint battle, the 9 retainers had all been chosen by the temple elders and some other major powers. Hee, you're still thinking about Changyang? It's said that Changyang has been missing for a very long time already. No one knows if he's still alive. Even if he's still alive, he doesn't have the right to set foot in the Radiant Saint Hall even if he's still alive. Isn't it a huge joke for a low-level disciple who doesn't even have the right to set foot in the sacred hall to become one of the 9 retainers? At this moment, a voice rang out from below the ring. The white-robed Gongjing Xan currently stood below the ring and spoke without any scruples. Immediately, Jianshin's voice rang through the entire square, allowing all the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there to hear him clearly. During the past 2 years, Jianshin had always been in seclusion. He was certain that Changyang was dead after he heard that someone from his clan had gone to deal with him. This was because he refused to believe that Changyang could escape from the experts sent by his clan with a mere one-colored soul core. He had only emerged yesterday, so he did not receive the news that Changyang had returned to the Radiant Saint Hall. Changyang actually doesn't even have the right to set foot in the sacred hall. It looks like he's also a low-level disciple with no background. Not only is his cultivation low, but he also has no background. He's just dreaming if he wants to become one of the 9 retainers of the chosen saint with those conditions. Donglin Yan Shui has actually chosen Changyang to become the 9th protector. This is rather intriguing. Jianshin's words immediately led to a discussion among the lords of the various peaks in the surroundings. Many divine king of the Radiant Saint Hall whispered to one another secretly. Jianshin frowned slightly. He was much more powerful than all the divine king of the Radiant Saint Hall present, and his senses had become extremely shocking after his soul had mutated. As a result, many of the messages from the divine king of the Radiant Saint Hall were unable to escape his senses. He heard them clearly. A cold light flashed through Jianshin's eyes. He did not continue to hide it. He called out from the crowd, who said, "I don't have the right to set foot in the sacred hall." Jianshin had called out directly, so he immediately attracted the gazes of everyone present. At that moment, it was not just the surrounding divine king of the Radiant Saint Hall. Even the elders on the stage looked towards Jianshin. Donglin Yan Shui naturally discovered Jianshin as well. A sliver of surprise immediately flashed through her eyes. Clearly, she had no idea why Jianshin had appeared in the sacred hall. According to her understanding of Jianshin, Jianshin did not have the right to be here. "Changyang, it's actually you." Jianshin released the senses of his soul without any hesitation. When he discovered Jianshin, he became stunned. The person he believed to be dead was actually still standing there alive. He was extremely surprised by this outcome. However, Jianshin growled with a sunken face, "Changyang, why have you appeared in the sacred hall? You don't have the right to be here." Afterwards, Jianshin did not wait for Jianshin's reply. He immediately said to the elders on the stage, "Master, elders, Changyang has snuck into the sacred hall. He has broken the rules of the Radiant Saint Hall. Please investigate this matter." Donglin Yan Shui's face changed slightly when she heard that. She secretly worried for Jianshin inside. Not just anyone could enter the sacred hall. Even peak lords could not set foot in there without important matters. If Changyang had really snuck in, it would be a great crime. We're in trouble. We're in big trouble now. Senior brother, what do we do now? Bai Yu grabbed Jianshin's arm from beside Jianshin as she became worried. She also believed that her senior brother had snuck in because, according to her understanding of him, he did not have the right to set foot in the sacred hall. Many of the elders on the stage became stern as well. They all stared at Jianshin with piercing gazes as an invisible pressure gradually radiated from the stage. "You're Changyang? Changyang, tell us the truth. How did you sneak into the sacred hall? If you can't give us a reason, you'll be in big trouble, Elder Muzhong said extremely sternly. Jianchen remained calm. He clasped his fist towards the stage, first before saying, Disciple Changyang of the soaring clouds peak greets the elders. Elder Muzhong, that's a little too serious. I only have a one-colored soul core. How am I supposed to infiltrate the heavily guarded sacred hall? I'll probably be captured by the enforcers before I even get close to the sacred hall. Since I'm able to make it here, I've done so openly. Did any of you allow Changyang to set foot in the sacred hall? Elder Muzhong looked at the other elders on the stage. At the same time, he sent the senses of his soul into the sacred hall to ask the other elders. The sacred hall was an inviolable existence in the hearts of all radiant Saint Masters. They could not allow any blasphemy. If a low-level disciple really did set foot in the sacred hall without permission, it would definitely be a huge crime that could not be forgiven easily. The other elders all shook their heads when they heard Elder Muzhong's question. Master, please help Changyang. I owe him a very great favor. Donglin Yen Shui also realized the severity of the matter, so she hurriedly asked Mu Shui secretly. Mu Shui shook her head gently and said sternly, Changyang's actions are blasphemy against the sacred hall. He's acting too recklessly. I will never help him. Very soon, Elder Muzhong received a reply from the other elders. None of them had allowed Changyang to set foot in the sacred hall. At that moment, Elder Muzhong's gaze sharpened. Chapter 23:57. With that, 2 violet-robed guards immediately flew towards Jianchen emotionlessly. On the stage, Donglin Yen Shui sighed gently. She looked at the violet-robed guards that approached Jianchen and felt powerless. Although she was one of the 5 candidates and possessed a certain level of status in the Radiant Saint Hall, she really was unable to help Jianchen at a time like this. It's over, it's over. Second senior brother, what do we do? Beside Jianchen, Baiyu was filled with worry. She was extremely worried about Jianchen's fate. As the disciple of an elder, she knew all the rules of the Radiant Saint Hall extremely well. She understood just how sacred the sacred hall was. Trespassing without permission was definitely a great crime, and the consequences would be extremely severe. Changyang, even if you don't die outside, I definitely won't let you have an easy time in the future. And who knows what the people in the clan are doing? Didn't they say they've already sent experts to kill Changyang? Why is he still alive? Jianchen sneered in the crowd as a cold light flashed through his eyes. This disciple called Changyang is in big trouble now. A mere disciple with a one-colored soul core dares to trespass into the sacred hall. He's blaspheming the sacred hall. Let alone him. Even the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak probably won't be able to avoid punishment. This is a lesson for us. We have to watch over our disciples strictly after we return, just in case disaster befalls us in the future and we get dragged down by our disciples. At the same time, all the radiant god kings gathered there whispered to one another secretly as they discussed the matter. At this moment, the 2 violet-robed guards had already arrived before Jianchen. A thick chain had appeared in their hands. The chain was forged from a special metal, and it was engraved with layers of formations. Once bound by the chain, not only would it seal up the person's cultivation, but it would also become extremely heavy, making it difficult for the person to move. Only people who had committed great crimes in the Radiant Saint Hall could receive such punishment. Hold on. Just when the 2 guards were about to bind Jianchen with the chain, Jianchen suddenly called out. He stared at Elder Muzhong calmly and said loudly, Elder Muzhong, may I ask why you've determined that I've trespassed on the sacred hall and want to arrest me? You've trespassed on the sacred hall without the permission of any elders. It's a great crime, Elder Muzhong said. In other words, I need the permission of an elder to enter the sacred hall. Even my medallion doesn't have the right to let me in? Or in other words, the authority granted by my medallion isn't as great as the authority granted by the elders? Jianqin said loudly. Afterwards, with a flip of his hand, he took out the medallion Xianzhan had given him and raised it high above his head. When Elder Muzhong saw the medallion that represented the vice leader in Jianqin's hand, his old body immediately trembled. His eyes suddenly narrowed as he became shocked. That's the vice leader's medallion. It's vice leader Xianzhan. How is this possible? Why does he have vice leader Xianzhan's medallion? What's his relationship with vice leader Xianzhan? He's a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core, and he's completely unknown. Why does he have vice leader Xianzhan's medallion? Not only was Elder Muzhong shocked the moment he saw the medallion in Jianqin's hand, but even the expressions of the other elders changed. They were filled with disbelief. As for the divine king below the stage, they stopped discussing secretly at that moment. They all stared at the medallion that represented the vice leader in Jianqin's hand. Their expressions changed rapidly. Donglin Yan Shui's eyes were filled with a strange light as well. She stared at the medallion in Jianqin's hand without blinking at all. A smear of blankness appeared on her alluring face, as well as some doubt and confusion. She was filled with many questions the moment she saw the medallion. Since Changyang possessed the vice leader's medallion, he definitely had quite a deep relationship with the vice leader. If he wanted to enter the Tower of Radiance, he could have just told the vice leader. Although the conditions for entering the Tower of Radiance were very harsh, it was only a matter of a single sentence for the vice leader to make an exception for a disciple with his authority. However, why did Changyang offer up an extremely precious pure soul and go through so much trouble to become her 9th retainer so that he could enter the Tower of Radiance? Suddenly, Donglin Yan Shui discovered that she seemed to have completely lost track of Changyang's intentions. Yan Shui, do you still not understand? Changyang wants to become your 9th retainer because he wants to get close to you on purpose. Yan Shui's master, Mu Shui, seemed to have seen through everything. She said to Donglin Yan Shui secretly. Donglin Yan Shui carefully thought back to how she had met Changyang. She did not miss out on a single detail. In the end, she shook her head gently. No, master. Changyang shouldn't be someone like that. I won't say too much about that. You're naturally intelligent, so you can judge for yourself, said Mu Shui. Afterwards, she paused and continued. However, since Changyang possesses Vice Leader Xianzhan's medallion, it means that Vice Leader Xianzhan is supporting him. As a result, his status in the Radiant Saint Hall is no weaker than yours. It might even surpass yours. Out of the 8 Vice Leaders, Vice Leader Xianzhan is the most powerful. The other 7 Vice Leaders all have to show some respect to Vice Leader Xianzhan. As a result, if Vice Leader Xianzhan is supporting Changyang, there's basically no one who would dare to provoke him in the Radiant Saint Hall. Mu Shui explained to Donglin Yan Shui. Her intentions were rather thought-provoking. Donglin Yan Shui remained silent. She looked at Jianqin, who stood in the crowd with mixed feelings. At that moment, she could not help but doubt Jianqin's true intentions. Was he really trying to get close to her like her master had said? After all, she was the prodigy of the Radiant Saint Hall. There were countless people who pursued her, so she had already become accustomed to it. However, was Changyang one of them? Jianqin's face immediately became extremely ugly in the crowd, while Baiyu, who stood beside Jianqin, was stunned and excited. On the stage, Elder Muzhong glanced at Jianqin deeply. With his strength, he could naturally tell with a single glance that Jianqin's medallion was real. The 2 violet-robed guards backed off obediently after Jianqin showed them the Vice Leader's medallion. This was because the elders did not have the right to judge the people with the Vice Leader's medallion, so Elder Muzhong's orders naturally did not apply. Since you possess the Vice Leader's medallion, you obviously have the right to enter the Sacred Hall, Elder Muzhong said to Changyang. Afterwards, he looked around and continued, Let's move on to the final protector. Elder Muzhong paused there. After careful consideration by Old Man, the final protector will be chosen by the Broken Blade Peak. Just when Elder Muzhong was about to announce the final protector, his voice came to a halt. Soon after, an extremely rare expression of respect was revealed on his elderly face, while extreme astonishment quickly surfaced in his elderly eyes. Chapter 2358. What? A low-level Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core is actually going to be the protector of the final candidate. How is this possible? Changyang only has a one-colored soul core. How can he take on such a heavy responsibility with such a weak cultivation? Unbelievable. He's actually going to get a low-level disciple with a one-colored soul core to be the protector of a candidate with a four-colored soul core. Just who is going to be the protector of who? This is unprecedented. This really is unprecedented. Throughout history, both protectors and retainers have always been the Divine King of Light. This is the first time someone with a one-colored soul core has taken on such a heavy responsibility. The Divine King of Light on the square fell into an uproar when Elder Muzhong announced the list. At that moment, all of them were stunned by this outcome. The vice leader must have spoken. It looks like the relationship between Changyang and the vice leader isn't as simple as it seems. It can't be helped. Who told Changyang to have the vice leader support? And it's vice leader Xianzhan. Although the retainers of chosen saints have always been divine kings throughout history, the Radiant Saint Hall has never made a clear rule that only a divine king can become the retainer or protector of a candidate. As a result, appointing a low-level disciple with a one-colored soul core to be the protector does not go against the Sacred Hall's rules. The many divine kings of light whispered to one another, engaging in an intense discussion through communication techniques. Even though the huge square seemed peaceful on the surface, to the point where even the drop of a pin could be heard, the divine kings of light gathered there were in an uproar. Their gazes towards Jianshan were filled with mixed feelings. There was envy and jealousy. The authoritative elders on the stage fell silent as well. They all looked at Jianshan with extremely mixed feelings. They could naturally sense that Elder Muzhong had changed his mind in the end because he had received orders from above. Even though none of them were optimistic about this, none of them dared to object, including Elder Muzhong. None of them dared to voice their displeasure. This was because they understood in their hearts that the orders that Elder Muzhong had received had most likely come from Deputy Hall Chief Xianzhan. Forget about the fact that they, as elders, had no right to object to Deputy Hall Chief Xianzhan's decision. Even the other 7 Deputy Hall Chiefs had to give him some face. Vice Leader Xianzhan values Changyang far more than I expected. Yan Shui, this is an opportunity for you. If you can establish a connection with Vice Leader Xianzhan through Changyang, you'll benefit immeasurably in the future. Mu Shui's master said to Donglin Yan Shui secretly. At that moment, she no longer dared to underestimate Changyang, who only had a one-colored soul core. Donglin Yan Shui stood in the ring. She stared at the ordinary-looking Changyang in the crowd with some mixed feelings. She remained silent. How is this possible? To one side, Jianshan, who also stood in the crowd, was completely dumbfounded. Baiyu, who stood beside Jianshan, was stunned by this outcome as well. Her mouth hung agape as disbelief filled her face. I now announce that the competition between the chosen saints has officially begun. The 5 candidates and all protectors are to enter the ring immediately. Elder Muzhong's voice rang out again at this moment. Hearing this, the other 4 prospective holy sons and dozens of Tao protectors immediately flew onto the arena. Junior sister, I'll be going up first. Jianshan said to Baiyu before controlling his radiant saint force and entering the ring under the envious gazes of the Divine King. Soon, more than 40 guardians were led by their respective prospective holy sons and stood in 5 different camps. However, all of their gazes would sweep past Jianshan, whether intentionally or not. Apart from the 5 candidates, everyone else on the ring was either a divine king or an elder. Jianqin stood there with a mere one-colored soul core. He really was a little out of the ordinary. Elder Mu Zhong stared at everyone with shining eyes and said, "Next, all of you will be sent into a miniature world. There are various vicious beasts in the miniature world, and the strongest among them are at the late Divine King. Your mission as protectors is to ensure the safety of the candidates in there." Afterwards, Elder Mu Zhong's gaze landed on the 5 candidates. He said, "As for the 5 of you, your mission is to search for radiant origin pearls in the miniature world. The radiant origin pearls are extremely special. They form naturally in the Tower of Radiance, so they cannot be sensed with the senses of the soul. Only those with extremely great talent and extremely close to Radiant Saint Force will be able to sense their existence within a certain range. This round is extremely important to all of you. Only the 2 people who obtain the most radiant origin pearls in the end will be able to continue to the next round. The remaining 3 will be directly eliminated. Remember, the duration of this round is a year. During this time, the 5 of you are forbidden from engaging in battles to the death, or you will lose your right to compete for the position of chosen saint." Towards the end, Elder Mu Zhong's voice became extremely stern. Afterwards, Elder Mu Zhong took out an ancient seal. As soon as the ancient seal appeared, it immediately gave off a powerful pulse of energy. It was mixed with the power of space, which interfered with the operation of the surrounding space. Elder Mu Zhong swung the ancient seal at the sky, and immediately the space above the ring pulsed violently. A huge space gate slowly formed. This miniature world is called the world of Moon and Star. In order to prevent overly powerful beasts from appearing, Elder He-Tian will travel with you. Now, all participants, enter the world of Moon and Star immediately. With that, the 5 candidates and 45 protectors all rose into the air with Radiant Saint Force behind the 5 candidates, charging into the space gate. As soon as Jianqin set foot in the world of Moon and Star, he discovered that he and everyone else stood on a mountain peak. The peak of the mountain seemed to have been shaved off, so there was only a small platform at the top. Jianqin closed his eyes gently. He could clearly sense that the laws of the world here were not complete. The entire world was much weaker than the Saint's world. Chapter 2359. Welcome to the world of Moon and Star. The world of Moon and Star is a medium-sized miniature world where yin, yang, and the 5 elements are incomplete. The reason why it's called the world of Moon and Star is because there's only a single star and a single moon. There's no sun. Just as everyone stared at the world of Moon and Star curiously, an old voice rang out from up ahead. A bald old man was sitting cross-legged in front of the crowd. The old man had an ordinary appearance, but he was abnormally thin. Even though he was wrapped in a large white robe, everyone could still see his thin and frail body. Greetings to Elder He-Tian, Yan Shui, Jianqin, Bin, Dan, and Shurda all bowed politely when they saw the old man. Many of the Divine King present did not know the old man's true identity, but the 5 candidates had the right to enter the sacred hall, so they came into contact with many elders. As a result, they recognized many of the elders. The protectors standing behind the 5 quasi-saints bowed respectfully after learning of the old man's identity. Elder He-Tian waved his hand and said, "There's no need for that. There's no need for such formalities. I'll give you a detailed explanation of the situation of the world of Moon and Star now." Elder He-Tian paused before continuing. "Even though the world of Moon and Star is a medium-sized world, it's extremely vast. Even with the senses of my soul, I can only envelop a tenth of the world of Moon and Star. A few vicious beasts live in the world of Moon and Star. Due to the special environment of the world of Moon and Star, the mental development of these vicious beasts is very low. As a matter of fact, even though many of the vicious beasts possess great strength, they still do not possess intelligence. They only act on instinct. Before you came here, the Hall Elders had already purged the vicious beasts of the world of moon and star, slaying all the primordial realm beasts. As a result, the strongest of the vicious beasts that remain are only late Divine King. You 5 prospective Holy Sons will each have one of these tokens. Once you are faced with a life or death crisis, activate this token immediately. Within the realm of moon and star, no matter how far away they were, Old Man could instantly sense the location of the token and come to their rescue. However, once this token is activated, it means that you have already lost the qualifications to compete for the position of saint. All right, I've said what I need to say. Now you can act on your own. How many origin pearls you can find in the end will depend on your own luck. The gate to the world of moon and star will only open in a year's time. At that time, you can just gather here. Elder Hetien, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, did not move at all. He gave a serious order to the crowd, then waved his hand and dismissed them. Afterwards, the 5 candidates left the mountain peak with their respective protectors. They did not travel in groups. Instead, they each chose a direction and sped off. Even though there were many vicious beasts on par with the Divine King in the world of moon and star, the candidates did not show any fear at all. This was because there were many Divine King among their protectors, and they were all powerful hallowed Saint Masters who were known to be unmatched at the same level. With so many hallowed Saint Masters with them, they were confident that they could even put up a fight against peak Divine King Vicious Beasts. Changyang, you're the weakest. Remember, you can't run around recklessly here. You can't deal with any vicious beast that appears here. At this moment, Donglin Yen Shui suddenly turned around and said to Jianchen. She looked at Jianchen's ordinary face with her dark, beautiful eyes, and an undetectable sliver of mixed feelings appeared. Ever since she first met Jianchen at the moon's reflection lake, the feeling that Jianchen gave Donglin Yen Shui was that of confidence, maturity, and steadiness. He possessed a calmness where he could remain unfazed even if the sky collapsed. His bearing was completely different from the so-called prodigies she usually saw. Moreover, whenever she saw Jianchen's gaze towards her would always be as calm as water. It was completely different from the radiant Saint Masters who pursued her. As a result, Donglin Yen Shui believed that Jianchen had approached her proactively and offered up a precious pure soul just to enter the Tower of Radiance. After all, the Tower of Radiance was a holy land that all radiant Saint Masters yearned for. As a radiant Saint Master, Jianchen's yearning for the Tower of Radiance could not be any more normal. However, ever since Jianchen took out Vice Leader Xian Zhan's medallion, Donglin Yen Shui began to doubt Jianchen's intentions for approaching her. Coupled with the explanation from her master, Mu Shui, basically made Donglin Yen Shui believe her master's words completely. With the Vice Leader's medallion, obtaining a spot to enter the Tower of Radiance was nothing difficult at all. However, why did Jianchen offer up a pure soul and go through so much trouble to become her protector? After all, she was only one of the 5 candidates. Even Donglin Yen Shui was not confident that she could successfully become the chosen saint in the end. However, Jianchen knew this, yet he still insisted on doing so. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell with a single glance that he was purposefully approaching Donglin Yen Shui. Jianchen rubbed his nose when he heard what Donglin Yen Shui said. He had no idea how to react. He had never thought that he would actually end up being protected by someone who was equivalent to a deity. However, Donglin Yen Shui did not look at Jianchen for too long. She looked away rather indifferently. After confirming that Jianchen was purposefully approaching her, her heart became rather cold in a single moment. The distance between her and Jianchen unknowingly grew further and further. This was because she found Jianchen's actions very repulsive. Jianchen's various unusual actions in the Radiant Saint Hall had left a proper impression on her, but it collapsed at this moment. As a result, Jianchen was no different from the other suitors in her eyes. Haha, Junior Changyang, I, Lu Fan, am a few years older than you, so I'll just call you Junior Brother. You only need to stay by Junior Yen Shue's side in the world of moon and star this time. You don't need to worry about anything else. We'll deal with it." At this moment, one of Yen Shue's protectors said. He was a middle-aged man, a mid-god king. Jianqin had learnt about this person before. He was the lord of the Cloud Mist Peak, one of the peaks of the Radiant Saint Hall, Lifan. His cultivation was even greater than the Soaring Clouds Peak's Peak Master Han Xan and the Snowfall Peak's Peak Master Zhou Yuan. Haha, that's right. Leave all the beasts we come across to us. Junior Changyang, you just need to take care of Junior Yen Shui. Afterwards, a few more protectors spoke up. They all smiled and treated Jianqin politely. They even flattered him slightly, even though Jianqin's cultivation was the lowest among them, so he still needed someone to protect him as a protector. However, with Vice Leader Xianzhan's support, none of the protectors dared to offend him. They even tried their best to befriend Jianqin. This was because they all knew that the reason why Jianqin could become a protector was all because of Vice Leader Xianzhan's arrangements. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to get past Elder Mu Zhong. As for their motives, the few peak masters who considered themselves to be astute and farsighted were naturally well aware of it. Jianqin exchanged some pleasantries with the protectors casually before looking at Donglin Yen Shui. He asked, "Can you sense the location of the Radiant Origin Pearl?" The reason why he asked that was because Jianqin could vaguely sense a pulse that was extremely similar to Radiant Saint Force from a certain place in front of him. The pulse was extremely obscure and wondrous. He could sense its existence, not because his senses were great, but because the laws of the hallowed he comprehended seemed to resonate with the pulse. Chapter 2360. It looks like Donglin Yen Shui hasn't sensed the pulse that's extremely similar to Radiant Saint Force. However, I can't be certain whether the pulse comes from the Radiant Origin Pearl or not. Jianqin thought. He had already learnt from Elder Mu Zhong that the Radiant Origin Pearls originated from the Tower of Radiance. They were extremely special, where they could not be sensed with the senses of the soul. Only those with extremely great talent who were extremely close to Radiant Saint Force could sense their existence. Did the so-called extremely great talent who were extremely close to Radiant Saint Force refer to the ranks of geniuses in the Radiant Saint Hall? 9-star geniuses were peak talent in the Radiant Saint Hall, and all the candidates taking part in the competition this time were 9-star geniuses. If the pulse really does come from the Radiant Origin Pearl, doesn't that mean my talent is even greater than Donglin Yen Shui's? Jianqin thought. He stared straight ahead. He could sense that the pulse was 100 kilometers away from him. At that moment, the group of people were moving in a straight line toward the direction of the energy fluctuation. They all flew around 20 meters above the ground. Even though they had all slowed down out of consideration for Jianqin's cultivation, 100 kilometers was nothing to them. Very soon, Jianqin's group arrived within 20 kilometers of the pulse. At this moment, Jianqin also secretly paid attention to Donglin Yen Shui's reaction. But he discovered that Donglin Yen Shui remained the same as before, as if she had not discovered the pulse at all. When they were 3 miles away from the ripple, the direction in which the group was advancing changed slightly. They were gradually distancing themselves from the source of the ripple. Jianqin stopped decisively when he saw this. He said, "We can't just move around aimlessly like this. Let's take a break and discuss our plan." With that, Jianqin dispersed the Radiant Saint Force around him before everyone agreed. He landed on the ground. As soon as Jianqin stopped, the 8 protectors behind Donglin Yen Shui immediately revealed troubled expressions. They glanced past Jianqin and Donglin Yen Shui and hesitated. They had no idea whether they should continue with Donglin Yen Shui or stop with Jianqin. The 8 of them understood that although they were the protectors of the candidate, they were naturally responsible for protecting Jianqin, since Vice Leader Xianzhan was bold enough to allow Jianqin, who only had a 1-colored soul core, into the world of moon and star. There were many vicious beasts in the world of moon and star, and some of them had even reached the level of the divine king. They really did not dare to leave Jianchen alone. If anything happened to him and the vice leader blamed them, they would not be able to bear the consequences. Donglin Yanxue, on the other hand, frowned slightly. She looked at Jianchen with some displeasure and said, "Radiant origin pearls are extremely difficult to find. All methods of searching are useless. Finding it is completely up to luck. Do you really think you can find a radiant origin pearl by coming up with a useless plan? It's better than running around aimlessly like this, right?" Jianchen said casually. He looked around and just happened to discover a 10-meter wide boulder 3 kilometers away where the pulse came from. Jianchen's eyes lit up. He said, "There's a boulder there. Let's go sit down first and think of a plan as well so that we can collect more radiant origin pearls." With that, Jianchen directly flew towards the boulder in the distance. Donglin Yanxue could not help but feel displeased when she saw how Jianchen did not care about his priorities at all and continued to do whatever he wanted in the world of moon and star. Ever since Jianchen's upright image shattered in her heart, she began to view Jianchen in a completely different light. In particular, Donglin Yanxue felt extremely disgusted by Jianchen's current actions. In Donglin Yanshue's opinion, Jianchen was basically wasting her precious time. After all, they only had a year to search for radiant origin pearls. Every minute and second was extremely precious. At this moment, Jianchen had already arrived on the boulder by himself. He sat there leisurely, and the pulse he had sensed before came from below the boulder. At such a close distance, Jianchen's senses became even clearer. He could clearly sense that the object that gave off the pulse was a milky white bead buried in the ground. This should be the radiant origin pearl. At that moment, Jianchen had basically confirmed the identity of the bead. At this moment, Donglin Yanxue flew over with dissatisfaction and impatience under the accompaniment of the 8 protectors. Jianchen sat on the boulder as he silently sensed the distance between Donglin Yanxue and Donglin Yanxue. He wanted to know just how close she needed to be to sense the existence of the radiant origin pearl. Finally, when Donglin Yanxue was a kilometer away from the boulder, her expression immediately changed. In the next moment, joy filled her eyes. She turned into a streak of white light and arrived before the boulder Jianchen sat on as quickly as she could. She called out to Jianchen, "Changyang, move!" What? Jianchen did not seem to react. He stared at Donglin Yanxue blankly as he became confused. "I told you to move. I want to shatter this boulder. If you don't move, you can't blame me if you get injured." Donglin Yanxue called out. Donglin Yanxue called out. The laws of the hallowed had already condensed around her. The radiant palm had already condensed and was about to strike the rock. Jianchen's expression finally changed when he saw this. Without any hesitation, he directly leaped off the boulder. Although it was impossible for Donglin Yanxue to injure him, he was currently acting as a radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. Bang! As soon as Jianchen left the boulder, a great sound rang out. A 10-meter-wide boulder had been shattered by Donglin Yanshue's palm strike, shooting into the air as fragments. And under the mountain rock, a bright white light bloomed, only to see a thumb-sized white bead quietly lying on the ground. The radiant origin pearl. Donglin Yanxue cried out. She took a step forward and picked up the radiant origin pearl in joy. So this is the radiant origin pearl. It can only be seen with the naked eye. It's impossible to find its traces with the senses of the soul. This radiant origin pearl really is wondrous. At this moment, the 8 protectors all gathered over. They all studied the radiant origin pearl curiously as they clicked their tongues in wonder. At this moment, Donglin Yanxue suddenly looked at Jianchen doubtfully. She said, "Changyang, I sensed it when I was a kilometer away. You sat on the boulder and were only 10 meters away from the radiant origin pearl. How could you not sense the radiant origin pearl at such a close distance? Don't forget that you're a 9-star genius, while I'm only a 1-star genius, Jianqin said helplessly. He could not expose his talent so early. You can't blame Junior Changyang for this. The radiant origin pearl is just too difficult to sense. Even with my 7-colored soul core, I only vaguely sensed it when I was 100 meters away. A protector said as soon as Jianqin finished speaking. Sigh, I'm a 3-star genius and also have a 7-colored soul core. Yet I can only vaguely sense the radiant origin pearl when I'm 10 meters away from it. It makes sense that Junior Changyang can't sense it. Another protector said in shame, speaking up for Jianqin perfectly. Chapter 2361. Jianqin naturally sensed the change in Donglin Yan Shui's attitude towards him, but he did not care about that. In his opinion, it would be enough as long as he could make Donglin Yan Shui become the chosen saint successfully and earn the right to enter the Tower of Radiance. Vice Leader Xianzhan possessed the authority to directly allow any Radiant Saint Master into the Tower of Radiance. Jianqin did not know about this, but even if he did, he would not be willing to directly go to the Vice Leader. This was because his identity was extremely sensitive, so he did not want to have too much to do with Vice Leader Xianzhan. Otherwise, once the secret of his martial soul force was exposed, it would undoubtedly cause a lot of trouble for Vice Leader Xianzhan. I think as long as there are powerful vicious beasts, there will definitely be radiant origin pearls. Radiant origin pearls are difficult to find. The senses of the soul won't be able to detect their existence, but the vicious beasts won't be able to escape the senses of the soul. As a result, we only need to find the powerful vicious beasts, Jianqin suggested. The radiant origin pearls were a product of the Tower of Radiance. The reason why they had appeared in the world of Moon and Star was because the elders had let them in. Since the elders treated finding the radiant origin pearls as a test, there would definitely be a certain level of difficulty. It would not be something as simple as luck. Donglin Yan Shui immediately frowned when she heard that. In the world of Moon and Star, some powerful vicious beasts possessed the strength of a divine king. If they really did provoke these vicious beasts, let alone Jianqin, who only had a 1-colored soul core, even she with her 4-colored soul core would be no different from an ant before these vicious beasts. It was possible to say that the two of them would not even be able to endure the shock waves of battle against vicious beasts at such a level. Junior Changyang is right. Radiant origin pearls probably exist in the territories of these powerful vicious beasts. Junior Yan Shui, why don't we go find those vicious beasts? Don't worry, Junior Yan Shui. We have the 8 Divine King Radiant Saints here. Dealing with those vicious beasts with low intelligence will be a piece of cake. Yeah, even if we come across a peak Divine King Radiant Saint Vicious Beast, we'll only need 2 or 3 people to kill them easily. The vicious beasts here are nothing to worry about. Radiant origin pearls are difficult to find, but it's far too easy for the vicious beasts to find them. The 8 protectors who had come with them were all saint were fearless. With the laws of the hallowed saint, their battle prowess to become even greater than cultivators of the same level of cultivation. As a result, the vicious beasts in the world not to be taken seriously at all. Radiant Saint next. It was the 8 protectors' turn to lead the way. Their consciousness that belonged to the Divine King spread out from them, shrouding the surroundings as they began to actively search for ferocious beasts nearby. At the same time, elsewhere in the world of Moon and Star, a group led by Jianqin had stopped on a plain. 5 of the 9 protectors stood guard in the distance, while the candidate Jianqin had gathered with the other 4 protectors. Jianqin frowned. His face was gloomy. Ever since he had entered the world of Moon and Star, his face had been sunken. Even now, he still had not relaxed. You're either the people closest to our Gongjin clan, or you're subordinate to our Gongjin clan. Help me think of a way to kill Changyang in the world of Moon and Star, Jianqin said. Jianqin said with a sunken face. Aside from the other 5 protectors, The remaining 4 all belonged to the Gongjin clan. As a result, he trusted the 4 of them very much. The 4 protectors gathered around Gongjin. Xian frowned when they heard that. Troubled expressions appeared on their faces. If it were in the past, it would be nothing even if the Radiant Saint Hall discovered us trying to kill Changyang. With our status, the disciplinary hall wouldn't do anything to us. They would only punish us symbolically. But now, everyone knows that Changyang is Vice Leader Xian Zhan's subordinate. His status is different from before. The consequences of killing him are just far too severe. If Vice Leader Xian Zhan personally pursues the matter, even young Master Xen will be dragged into it. Yeah, Vice Leader Xian Zhan isn't as easy to talk to as the other 7 Vice Leaders. Moreover, Vice Leader Xian Zhan is the person you can't afford to offend in the Radiant Saint Hall aside from the Supreme Leader. Young Master Xen, you can't act on impulse. Young Master Xen, you have to remain calm. Changyang has Vice Leader Xian Zhan's support, so you can't afford to offend him. You have to understand who Vice Leader Xian Zhan is. He's an expert that even the ancestor of our Gongjin clan has to treat with respect. If Vice Leader Xian Zhan wants to punish you, do you think the ancestor will personally step forward and protect you at the risk of offending Vice Leader Xian Zhan? Young Master Xan, you can't act recklessly. Let's not even talk about how severe the consequences will be. Even if the 9 of us all listen to you and move out to deal with Changyang, we still might not be able to kill him because the 8 protectors around Donglin Yanshui will definitely treat Changyang's safety with greater importance than Donglin Yanshui. They'll definitely risk their lives to protect Changyang. Moreover, it's still unknown whether the other 5 protectors will listen to young Master Xan and deal with Changyang. The 4 protectors around Jianshin all tried to persuade him. They all wanted Jianshin to give up on killing Changyang here. Jianshin only had a 4-colored soul core. It was basically impossible for him to kill Changyang, who had 8 protectors with his cultivation. They would still have to take action in the end. However, if they really did lay their hands on Jianshin, they would be doomed once they left the world of moon and star. In their eyes, killing Changyang was equivalent to digging their own graves. Moreover, they did not have any deep grievances with Changyang, so they naturally did not want to die for Jianshin. Jianshin's face became uglier and uglier. With the cultivation of the Divine King, there was no need for them to clash with Donglin Yanshui's protectors if they really wanted to kill Changyang. All they needed to do was approach Changyang in a friendly manner and deal a fatal blow, and Changyang would die easily. They had declined because they were afraid of offending Vice Leader Xian Zhan. Young Master Xen, the matter at hand is to become the chosen saint. Let's search for radiant origin pearls as soon as possible. 3 people will be directly eliminated in the first round. Young Master Xen can't lose in this round. A divine king changed the topic and shifted Jianshin's attention. Yeah, young Master Xen, searching for radiant origin pearls is our top priority right now. There will definitely be radiant origin pearls in the territories of the powerful beasts in the world of moon and star. Young Master Xan, you have to move quickly, or the other 4 will get ahead of you. Another protector added, if that's the case, let's set off quickly and search for radiant origin pearls first. Jianshin also knew that it was impossible for these people to kill Jianshin. He stood up with a sunken face and called out before leaving with the 9 protectors. Chapter 2362. The entrance to the world of stars and moons was still the same mountain where everyone had entered. Elder Hitian slowly opened his eyes and gazed at the 5 candidates. He could not help but smile mysteriously as he murmured to himself, "They've finally thought of dealing with those vicious beasts. That's right. There are indeed radiant origin pearls where the powerful vicious beasts reside. However, those vicious beasts aren't as simple as you imagine them to be. They won't be easy to deal with. It's time for you to suffer." As soon as he said that, Elder Hitian's eyes suddenly narrowed. He suddenly stood up and looked into the distance. Suddenly he became stern and he growled. What powerful spatial pulses! Someone has opened the gateway to the world of moon and moons. Who is it? Before he had even finished speaking, Elder Hetion turned into a silver-white bolt of lightning and shot off into the distance with great speed. Millions of miles away in a void, the space was violently distorted. Countless cracks were intertwined, and a strong spatial fluctuation was transmitted from this place. This scene continued for several breaths before the space in the sky suddenly shattered like a mirror, revealing a pitch-black spatial passageway. A figure shone with resplendent light as he strode over with firm steps, descending into the world of moon and moons through the tunnel. After this figure walked out, the spatial tunnel behind him also disappeared. The shattered space also automatically healed. In a short moment, everything returned to normal. At this moment, the resplendent light around the figure gradually vanished, revealing his true appearance. It was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He wore a green suit, and his eyes were as bright as the moon and stars. His resolute and handsome face was covered with the kind of wind and frost that could only be left behind after experiencing the baptism of bloody storms and the test of life and death. The young man hovered in the air with his hands behind his back. He glanced around with his resplendent eyes, studying the surroundings. He murmured to himself, "There's a star and a moon in the sky. Looks like I was right. This is the world of moon and star, the place where the Radiant Saint Hall chooses their chosen saint." As he said that, the young man glanced to the side casually. A cold smile gradually appeared on his face. "I never thought there would be an elder here. This really is a great gift that the Radiant Saint Hall has prepared for me." With that, a streak of white light shot over with lightning speed. It arrived in an instant, revealing Elder Hetion. At this moment, Elder Hetion's presence surged as the laws of the hallowed revolved around him. He radiated with boundless pressure, but when he saw the young man's face, his face immediately changed. He cried out, "Aoyama, it's actually you." The young man smiled. Coupled with his handsome face, his smile was extremely enchanting and friendly. It was enough to make all the girls in the world fall in love with him. However, the elder of the Radiant Saint Hall, Hetion, did not feel any friendliness at all. Instead, he felt a chill as if he was facing a great enemy. His face became extremely stern at that moment. "I never thought you'd recognize me. My name, Aoyama, is very resounding in the Radiant Saint Hall," the young man smiled. "Young man, how did you enter the world of moon and star? Why have you come here for no reason?" Elder Hetion called out sternly. Even though he had condensed a soul tree and was an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall, possessing the cultivation of a primordial realm expert, he dared not be careless before this young man who was only a divine king. Aoyama's name had already spread across the saints' world. There were very few people who did not know him. He had suppressed all the divine kings in the saints' world and remained as the strongest divine king for many years. There had also been many rumors of him fighting against primordial realm experts. As a result of these glorious rumors, Aoyama had already become regarded as the invincible divine king and a portion of primordial realm experts in the saints' world. He was publicly acknowledged as the strongest divine king among all the divine kings in the saints' world. In the Radiant Saint Hall, Aoyama's name was placed at the top of the wanted list. All the elders knew his name. They all grit their teeth and hated him. They viewed him as a great problem for the Radiant Saint Hall in the future. This was because an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall had died to Aoyama's hands. At that moment, Elder Hetion was personally facing Qingshan. In an instant, he recalled the various rumors regarding Qingshan. This caused waves of chilliness to rise in his heart. Is there a need for me to tell you how I entered the world of moon and star? As for why I've come here, I can tell you that. Aoyama looked at Elder Hetion, and a cold smile gradually appeared on his face. He said, "I've obviously come for the 5 candidates. This time, I'll make it so that the Radiant Saint Hall has no chosen saint. Aoyama, don't you dare! Elder Hition's face changed drastically when he heard that. I, Aoyama, even dared to kill an elder of your Radiant Saint Hall. Why wouldn't I dare to kill a few candidates? However, from today onwards, one more elder will die to my hands, Aoyama sneered. With that, he directly struck out, sending a palm strike towards Elder Hition. Aoyama's hand possessed a mysterious power that could interfere with the souls of opponents. Faced with Aoyama's palm strike, Elder Hition immediately felt his soul become unstable. It throbbed and his vision blurred slightly. He felt dizzy. Martial soul force. Elder Hition cried out. He bit the tip of his tongue and forcefully cleared his head. The laws of the hallowed gathered around him as he engaged in an intense battle with Aoyama in the air. Elder Hition's cultivation was only equivalent to a first heavenly layer infinite prime, so he dared not to be careless against Aoyama. He used his full strength right from the start, not holding back at all. However, as soon as he clashed with Aoyama, Elder Hition's heart sank. When Aoyama struck out, the martial soul force in Aoyama's hand was already enough to affect his soul. However, when he actually clashed with Aoyama, the impact on his soul became even more intense. It felt as if someone had taken a sledgehammer and ruthlessly smashed his primordial spirit. Elder Hition could fend off Aoyama's attacks, but he was unable to fend off the impact from martial soul force. He could only endure it in an extremely passive manner. Moreover, the impact did not occur once or twice. Instead, he would endure an attack from martial soul force whenever he clashed with Aoyama. If the battle continued, even if he was far more powerful than Aoyama and possessed the ability to defeat Aoyama, his soul would not be able to last until then. Martial soul force really is wondrous. I can't find any way to fend it off. I need to end the battle quickly, or I'll definitely lose, thought Elder Hition. He did not dare to imagine just how severe the consequences would be if he lost. Chapter 2363. As Elder Hition and Aoyama engaged in an intense battle in the sky, the group of 10, led by Donglin Yen Shui, finally found a powerful beast 2 million kilometers away. An intense battle naturally erupted between the two sides. One of Donglin Yenshua's 8 protectors was currently engaged in a battle to the death with a feral beast that was over 30 meters tall and resembled a cow. It was a ferocious beast that resembled a bull. It was extremely huge. It seemed like a small mountain as it stood there, making the hallowed Saint Master who fought against it seem as insignificant as an ant. However, even though the two of them differed greatly in size, they were locked in battle. The laws of the hallowed that originated from the hallowed Saint Master clashed time and time again with the brutal energy within the beast, erupting with deafening booms. Powerful ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, stirring up the origin energy in the surroundings. Sand and pebbles were blown into the air as thick cracks appeared on the ground. This was a battle between the Divine King. The ripples from the battle spread to several tens of thousand kilometers away. Without the corresponding strength, it was impossible to approach it. 100 kilometers away, Donglin Yen Shui and Jianqin stood side by side as they watched the battle up ahead. The 7 other protectors split up into 7 different directions, forming a circle around Jianqin and Donglin Yen Shui. The 2 people at the very front worked together to create an energy shield, blocking the ripples of the battle for Donglin Yen Shui and Jianqin. If it were not for the protection of these protectors, Donglin Yen Shui probably would not have been able to get so close with her 4-colored soul core that was equivalent to a deity. She would have been pushed far away by the shock waves of energy from the battle between the man and beast. At this very moment, all of them were staring at the intense battle in front of them. Their brows were slightly furrowed. As for the other 7 protectors, their faces had turned somewhat ugly. How can this vicious beast be so powerful? It's clearly only equivalent to an early god king, yet it can match Qin Feng, who has a mid-7-colored soul core. Qin Feng is a hallowed Saint Master. In the Saints' world, hallowed Saint Masters are much more powerful than fighters at the same level of cultivation. With Chen Feng's cultivation equivalent to Mid-Divine King, he can easily defeat Mid-Divine King fighters. Yet he's actually unable to defeat an early Divine King. How can the vicious beasts of the world of Moon and Star be so powerful? The 7 protectors who protected Donglin, Yin Shui, and Genshin all said sternly. What was happening before them had completely overturned their understanding of the world. A strange light flickered through Genshin's eyes as he stood beside Yin Shui. He stared at the huge beast with shining eyes before raising his head to look at the sky from time to time. He was surprised and doubtful. A strand of true chaotic force had fused with his soul, causing it to mutate. As a result, he obtained various abilities. At this moment, he could clearly sense that a strand of the power of the world of Moon and Star had fused with the beast as it fought. As a result, the beast was able to fight on par with a hallowed Saint Master, who was equivalent to a mid-God King, even though it was only equivalent to an early God King. This beast can actually use the power of the world of Moon and Star. Genshin was shocked by this discovery. The light in his eyes flickered as he sank into his thoughts. This was not as simple as controlling the energy of the world. The power of the world of Moon and Star could fuse with the beast and assist it in battle. This was similar to how the artifact spirit of the Deep Sea Palace controlled the power of the Poseidon art to protect Xiaoman in the Poseidon Palace. The power of the Poseidon Palace came from the Poseidon Palace itself. However, the power that had fused with the beast and assisted it in battle came from the world of Moon and Star. It was definitely not as simple as the origin energy that roamed the world. Does this come from the beast's innate talent, or is the world of Moon and Star like the Poseidon Palace in the past, where a special existence is purposefully taking care of these beasts? Genshin sank into his thoughts. If it was the former, then so be it, but if it was the latter, his heart could not help but sink. But I can't eliminate the possibility that the Radiant Saint Hall is behind this. After all, this is a training ground. Since it's a training ground, there has to be a certain level of difficulty and challenge, Genshin guessed. However, at this moment, Genshin's eyes suddenly narrowed. He suddenly looked behind him. He could already sense that there were primordial realm experts engaged in an intense battle in the distance. Even though it was very far away, he could still sense the surging energy pulses that erupted from the battle. At that moment, Genshin's gaze sharpened. His sharp gaze seemed to possess the power to pierce through space, allowing him to see the scene 2 million kilometers away. With Genshin's current cultivation, 2 million kilometers was no longer an obstruction to his vision. At that moment, he could clearly see Elder He Tian fighting an azure-robed man in the air. Martial soul force. It's actually the pulses of martial soul force. Genshin cried out inside. At that moment, his heart churned, making it very difficult for him to remain calm. He possessed martial soul force in the first place, but he was unable to find the method to cultivate it. As a result, his martial soul force was still weak. Genshin immediately recognized the martial soul force Aoyama used against Elder He Tian. The protectors behind Genshin were all focused on the vicious beast up ahead, so none of them noticed the change in Genshin's emotions. That young man is only a divine king, yet he firmly possesses the upper hand in his battle against Elder He Tian. Such a powerful divine king who possesses martial soul force can only be Aoyama, who ranks first under the divine king, Genshin thought. Very soon, he deduced the young man's identity, and the light in his eyes flickered. At this moment, the battle between Aoyama and Elder He Tian became even more intense. The pulses of energy they erupted with became even more terrifying. Gradually, the 7 protectors around Genshin and Donglin, Yin Shui sensed it. Immediately, the 7 protectors all looked back. Their vision was nowhere near as great as Genshin's, so they were unable to see so far away with their naked eyes. As a result, they all released the senses of their souls. With their mid-divine king soul consciousness, they could easily cover the entire area. However, the area was filled with violent energy storms at the moment. Their soul consciousness couldn't get close at all. However, they could still sense Elder Hetion's presence and the power of the laws of the hallowed from the storms of energy. This caused all of their expressions to change abruptly. Oh no, there's a primordial realm expert in the world of moon and star. It looks like he's on par with Elder Hetion. That's not a good thing. How is that possible? Haven't all the primordial realm experts in the world of moon and star been purged by the elders? How has one slipped through? If the primordial realm expert can fight with Elder Hetion, he must be an enemy. If Elder Hetion can't last, we'll be doomed, the 7 protectors all cried out as their faces became extremely ugly. Clearly, they had realized the severity of the matter. Chapter 2364. Although Donglin Yen Shui was unable to sense the shock waves of the battle in the distance due to her low cultivation, she could hear quite a lot from the cries of the protectors in the surroundings. Her face immediately changed. Quick, send a few more people. End the battle quickly. Donglin Yen Shui called out. Out of the 7 remaining protectors, 3 of them immediately charged towards the vicious beast. The remaining 4 were responsible for protecting Jianqin and Donglin Yen Shui. The 7 protectors were all hallowed Saint Masters with mid-7-colored soul cores. With the 4 of them working together, they faced a vicious beast that was only equivalent to early Divine King. Even if the vicious beast had received the assistance of the world, making it extraordinarily powerful, it would not be able to last for very long. In just a while, the mountainous beast let out a chilling wail. It was beheaded by a blade of light condensed from the laws of the hallowed by the 4 hallowed Saint Masters. Its soul was wiped out, and its colossal body collapsed on the ground with a huge weight. The ground shook as dust filled the air. Go find the radiant origin pearl. Jianqin immediately called out to Donglin Yen Shui the moment the vicious beast died. At this moment, Jianqin became stern as well. The hallowed Saint Masters were unable to see the battle in the distance clearly, but he could see everything clearly. Aoyama's strength was unimaginably great. He actually gained the upper hand against Elder Hetion, who had reached the primordial realm. With his strength at the Divine King, he completely suppressed Elder Hetion. Jianqin could tell with a single glance that Elder Hetion's defeat was only a matter of time unless something unexpected happened. As a result, his heart sank. If Elder Hetion could not stop Aoyama, it would be impossible for the protectors to be Aoyama's opponent even if they worked together. Donglin Yen Shui did not hesitate at all when she heard Jianqin's call. She immediately flew towards the vicious beast's lair as a layer of light. Jianqin and the 7 protectors followed closely behind Donglin Yen Shui. As soon as they were half a kilometer away from the beast's lair, a gleam of light flashed through Donglin Yen Shui's eyes. She had already sensed the existence of the radiant origin pearl, so she immediately sped up, hurrying over with even greater speed. A while later, they entered the beast's lair. It was a huge cave, dark and damp. A thumb-sized radiant origin pearl was embedded in the rock at the very top of the cave. It shone with a gentle light, providing some light to the gloomy cave. One of the protectors extended a finger, and a strand of the laws of the hallowed shot out from his fingertip, shattering the rock above and making the radiant origin pearl fall down. It landed in his hand, and he passed it to Donglin Yen Shui. Donglin Yen Shui stowed the radiant origin pearl away. Just when she was about to continue looking around, Jianqin's voice rang out, "We can't stay here. We need to leave as soon as possible." Donglin Yen Shui frowned when she heard that. She was the candidate, the only person who could make decisions here. Since when was it Changyang's turn to give orders? Donglin Yen Shui looked at Jianqin impatiently. Just when she was about to say something, the expressions of the 8 protectors around her all changed. "Oh, no, they're approaching us. This is the shock waves of a battle between primordial realm experts. Once they get too close to us, we'll probably be injured by the shock waves. Not only will we be injured, but we won't even be able to protect ourselves. No, we need to leave here as soon as possible. They're just too fast. Let's go, or it'll be too late. We'll be caught in the crossfire. The 8 protectors all cried out as they became extremely stern. They had always been observing the situation in the distance with the senses of their souls. Even though they were unable to approach the center of the battle, they could clearly tell where Elder Hitian and Aoyama were. With the 8 protectors' cries, Dong Linyan Shui was no longer in the mood to argue with Jianqin over such a small matter. She immediately left with everyone else. The 8 protectors were clearly uneasy. As soon as they emerged from the cave, they controlled a ball of radiant light to envelop Jianqin and Dong Linyan Shui without saying anything before shooting off into the distance as quickly as they could. At this moment, even Dong Linyan Shui heard the thunderous booms in the distance. They grew louder and louder, getting closer and closer. This made Dong Linyan Shui's heart sink. It seemed like the situation was even worse than she had imagined it to be. The 8 protectors who had brought them along did not say anything at all. Their faces were sunken as they fled into the distance as quickly as they could. They wanted to get away from the primordial realm experts who constantly approached them. The deafening booms grew closer and closer. A pulse of energy that was extremely terrifying to the 8 protectors wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing the space there to distort. The origin energy in the world of moon and star became abnormally chaotic as well. In the distant sky, 2 figures clearly appeared before the eyes of the 8 protectors. Elder Hitian and Qingshan, who were fighting intensely, had already approached where the 8 protectors could see them. However, when the 8 protectors saw what was happening in the distance, their faces all changed drastically. Intense fear rose up from the bottom of their hearts. What did they see? The 8 of them clearly saw Elder Hitian covered in blood, fending off attacks from behind as he fled in a hurry. Behind Elder Hitian was a young man in azure robes. His face was resolute and cold, and his eyes shone with a chilling light. He pursued Elder Hitian closely. Clearly, Elder Hitian was not the young man's opponent. Aoyama of the martial soul lineage has infiltrated the world of moon and star. He wants to kill everyone from the Radiant Saint Hall. All protectors immediately protect the candidate and flee. Find a way to contact the outside world. At this moment, Elder Hitian's old voice rang out. His hoarse voice was filled with urgency and some weakness. He seemed to be powerless. Aoyama was just too powerful. With his control over martial soul force, he could attack Elder Hitian's soul every time he clashed with him. Elder Hitian was defeated soon after the battle began. He was heavily injured, so all he could do was flee madly. What? Aoyama of the martial soul lineage has infiltrated the world of moon and star. It's actually a member of the martial soul lineage. We're in trouble now. Even though Aoyama is at the peak of the Divine King, he can already kill primordial realm experts. We're not his opponent. Run, run. The 8 protectors all paled. They did not dare to remain here. Immediately, they fled into the distance as quickly as they could with Jianqin and Dong Linyan Shui. Chapter 2365. They had already heard of Aoyama's name. Even though they hated Aoyama to the core, they dared not resist at all when they actually saw him. The only thought they had was to flee, 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 and flee as far away as possible. It would be best if they could flee to a place where Aoyama could not find them and hide. Even Dong Linyan Shui struggled to remain composed after being enveloped by the light of the protectors. Her delicate face paled slightly as deep unease filled her eyes. Jianqin was the only person who remained composed among them. However, his brows were tightly furrowed at this moment. Let's gather up with the other 4 groups quickly and combine all the power of the Radiant Divine King before working with Elder Hitian. It's not impossible for us to fight against Aoyama, Jianqin said calmly. However, The 8 protectors turned a deaf ear to Jian Chen's words. They directly acted like they did not exist. Not only did they not rush towards the other 4 groups, but they even fled into the distance instead. Jian Chen could see slivers of undisguised fear in their eyes, as well as some despair. Jian Chen sighed and sighed when he discovered this. He was extremely disappointed in these people. Out of the 5 groups, there were a total of 44 divine kings. If these divine kings worked together, they would be a great force. Coupled with Elder He Tian, he believed that they would be enough to fend off Aoyama. Even if they were still not Aoyama's opponent, they would not be completely annihilated by Aoyama. Even if there was a tiny difference, he could secretly assist them when the time came. They were completely capable of fending off Aoyama. It was even possible for them to suppress Aoyama. However, he had underestimated the fear the protectors felt towards Aoyama. They did not have the courage to fight against Aoyama at all. They did not dare to fight against Aoyama, so they remained by Jian Chen's side the entire time. As a result, Jian Chen could not find an opportunity to assist them secretly even if he wanted to. Elder He Tian, on the other hand, changed directions after bellowing out. He flew off in another direction to draw Aoyama away. As for Qing Shan, he glanced past Donglin Yenshue's group indifferently as a cold smile appeared on his face. Afterwards, he continued in pursuit of Elder He Tian. In his eyes, the divine King of Light was nothing to worry about. No matter how they fled, they would not be able to escape from him in the end. However, Elder He Tian was an elder of the Sacred Hall, so it was extremely likely that he possessed a way to contact the outside world. As a result, killing Elder He Tian was his top priority right now. Aoyama gradually traveled into the distance as he pursued Elder He Tian. The booms from their battle grew further and further away as well. In the end, they completely vanished. The 8 Divine King of Light, who fled with Jian Chen and Donglin Yenshui, did not stop. They did not slow down at all as they fled even further away from the world of Moon and Star. Along the way, they even flew over the territories of a few vicious beasts, causing the vicious beasts there to chase after them madly. However, they ignored them as well. They only cared about fleeing. Sigh. Jian Chen sighed inside. He had still underestimated the protector's fear of Aoyama, which made him feel extremely helpless. He had already sensed the existence of several radiant origin pearls along the way, but he could only watch them pass by in the end. He could not warn them at all. The flight lasted for half a day. Half a day later, the 8 protectors finally stopped and landed in a hidden forest. Junior Yenshui, Junior Changyang, do you have any way to contact the outside world? As soon as they stopped, one of the 8 protectors, the Lord of the Cloud Mist Peak, Lu Fan, asked. He was very stern. The other 7 protectors all looked at Jian Chen and Donglin Yenshui eagerly. They did not even have the courage to fight against Aoyama. Even the only elder in the world of Moon and Star was not Aoyama's opponent. Now, they could only place their hopes on Jian Chen and Donglin Yenshui, 2 juniors with extraordinary backgrounds. They hoped that they could contact the outside world and let the Sacred Hall learn about the situation inside so that they could send even more powerful elders to kill Aoyama. Donglin Yenshui shook her head gloomily. The world of Moon and Star is a miniature world. None of the methods I know can pass through the obstruction of the miniature world and reach the Sacred Hall. I can't contact anyone in the outside world. The 8 protectors were unable to hide their disappointment when they heard that. They all looked at Jian Chen. One of them looked at Jian Chen eagerly and asked urgently, Junior Changyang, you should have a way to contact Vice Leader Xian Zhan, right? Jian Chen also sighed gently. I'm the same as Donglin Yenshui. We're separated by a world, so we can't contact the outside world at all. Probably only Elder He Tian has a way to contact the Sacred Hall here. We can't do anything, Donglin Yenshui added. She was also heavy-hearted. The 8 protectors' faces became ugly when they heard that. Elder He Tian was currently being hunted down by Aoyama. He was busy running for his life, So how could he have the time to contact the outside world? They had no idea how much longer he could last. As soon as they thought about how they would all face Aoyama's merciless pursuit, they immediately felt extremely uneasy and fearful. You can consider my suggestion before. If you keep delaying it, it really might be too late, Genshin said again. In his opinion, this was the only way for the Radiant Saint Masters to fend off Aoyama. The 8 Radiant Saint Masters all hesitated. After a moment of silence, they all expressed their opinions and began an intense discussion about Genshin's suggestion. Only 2 of them agreed with Genshin's suggestion. They wanted to gather with the other 4 groups and then work with Elder Hitian to deal with Aoyama using all the power of the Divine King. There was also a portion of them who objected. They believed that even if they gathered everyone's power, they would not necessarily be Aoyama's opponent. After all, Aoyama's name had already become deeply ingrained in their hearts. They were unwilling to face Aoyama in an open battle. They believed that they should use the opportunity when Aoyama was focused on Elder Hitian to flee far away and hide themselves. This would continue until the world of Moon and Star opened up again a year later. The final portion of people remained hesitant. They struggled to make a decision. At this moment, Jianchen and Donglin Yanshui were no longer of much use. At a time like this, even Donglin Yanshui's identity as the Divine King struggled to influence the decisions of the Radiant Divine King. This was because Donglin Yanshui was not a true chosen saint, while the 8 Radiant Divine King were only her protectors. Their main mission was to protect her, not to serve as her retainers. Jianchen felt helpless as he listened to the arguments of the Divine King. He was in no mood to listen to them. He made his way to a nearby tree all by himself before leaping onto the branch. His body was as weightless as a leaf as he sat down on a branch that was only as thick as a wrist. He stared ahead as light erupted from his eyes. His gaze became extraordinarily sharp at that moment, directly piercing through space and looking into the distance. Chapter 2366. But very soon, Jianchen's eyes dimmed and returned to normal. Elder Hitian and Aoyama were just too far away. They had exceeded the limits of his vision. Jianchen looked back and glanced at the 8 Divine King who were still arguing nearby, as well as the helpless Donglin Yanshui. After hesitating slightly, he carefully expanded the senses of his soul, extending it forward rapidly. Jianchen's original level of cultivation far exceeded the 8 protectors. Coupled with the fact that his soul had mutated, the senses of his soul were so powerful that the 8 protectors could not compare to it at all. As a result, in just a short while, Genshin's senses of his soul had already reached 5 million kilometers away. However, he did not stop there. Instead, he continued to expand. 6 million kilometers, 7 million kilometers. Very soon, Genshin's senses of his soul had reached 10 million kilometers away. Only then did he finally find Aoyama and Elder Hitian. They were still fighting, erupting with powerful ripples of energy. The ripples of energy affected Genshin's senses of his soul quite a bit, but they were unable to block out the senses of Genshin's soul like the 8 protectors. As a result, Genshin could clearly see the battle between Aoyama and Elder Hitian. Elder Hitian's presence was extremely weak. He was extremely injured, and he had lost a large amount of essence blood. He was just skin and bones now. Clearly, this was the price he had paid for using various secret techniques. He was finding it more and more difficult to block Aoyama's attacks, and he constantly vomited blood. He was already at the end of his rope. Before him, Aoyama's attacks were still extremely sharp. His presence was so powerful that it caused the surroundings to churn. Even though Elder Hitian was also covered in blood, he did not seem weak at all. When the senses of Genshin's soul reached him, a sliver of light immediately flashed through Elder Hitian's dim eyes. As if he had grasped onto a life-saving straw, he immediately called out to the sky, "I am an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall. Fellow, no matter who you are, please lend me a hand." Our radiant Saint Hall will be eternally grateful. On the other hand, Qing Shan had clearly sensed the senses of the soul that had spread over from afar. A chilling light immediately flashed through his cold eyes as he looked at Elder He Tian like he was looking at a dead man. He coldly said, "Stop dreaming. No matter who comes today, they won't be able to save you." As soon as he finished speaking, Qing Shan's green robes fluttered in the wind. His long hair danced in the wind. A terrifying aura emanated from his body, filling up the entire area. Soul Mountain Seal. Qing Shan crossed his arms in front of his chest and unleashed a powerful secret technique. With a low roar, a blurry and hazy illusory mountain condensed. It gave off a powerful pressure as it smashed towards He Tianzhong with a terrifying power that could suppress the heavens and earth. Elder He Tian bellowed out and also used a secret technique. He burned what little essence blood he had left and condensed the laws of the hallowed at the cost of his vitality. He shot it out with lightning speed as a resplendent spear. This was already Elder He Tian's final attack. After unleashing it, he completely withered away. He was on the verge of death. He had used everything he had against Aoyama, but before Aoyama's martial soul force, he felt powerless. He was unable to find any way to resist the attacks on his soul, so he suffered a crushing defeat in the battle. He did not even manage to injure Aoyama severely. Boom! With a great sound, Elder He Tian's final attack collided with Aoyama's illusionary mountain. It immediately erupted with a boom, causing the mountain to shake. However, it only shook. Not only did the illusionary mountain fail to disperse, but it also continued to fall without slowing down at all. It enveloped Elder He Tian with a suppressive force. "Fellow Taoist, please lend a hand." Elder He Tian let out a shrill roar. However, in the end, before the mysterious person in the dark could do anything, the soul mountain imprint formed by Qing Shan had already smashed into Elder He Tian. The soul mountain seal was extremely profound. It did not harm Elder He Tian's body. Instead, it directly struck Elder He Tian's soul. Elder He Tian's dim soul immediately collapsed, dispersing with the wind. The soul of the Radiant Saint Hall's Elder He Tian had been wiped out. After Elder He Tian's death, the senses of Genshin's soul receded like the tide, vanishing in a single instance. As for Qing Shan, he glanced around after killing Elder He Tian. His cold eyes flickered with a soul-stirring coldness as he murmured, "Who is this person?" The senses of his soul seemed to be slightly different from ordinary people. Even I can't sense the location of his soul when he's purposefully hiding it. That's right. In terms of the strength of his soul, he's only on par with this elder of the Radiant Saint Hall. If he's not from the Radiant Saint Hall, then so be it. But if he is, then don't blame me, Aoyama, for being merciless. Genshin slowly opened his eyes as he sat on a tree 10 million kilometers away from where Elder He Tian had died. He stared ahead sternly. He had already witnessed Aoyama's strength. He was much more powerful than Shui Yunlan back in Poseidon Palace. Even compared to himself, Aoyama was no weaker. Now that Elder He Tian was dead, the hallowed Saint Masters in the world of Moon and Star had completely lost the right to fight against Aoyama. Naturally, Genshin heard Elder He Tian's cry for help before he died. It was not that he did not want to save him, but he was 10 million kilometers away, so there was nothing he could do even if he wanted to. Even if he really did help, he had to consider whether his identity would be exposed or not. Otherwise, it would be an unwise action where he would end up harming himself while saving others. "You don't seem to be afraid at all?" At this moment, Donglin Yen Shue's voice rang out from behind Genshin. She had also leapt onto the tree and landed on a leaf gracefully. She stared at Genshin's back with rather mixed feelings. At this moment, Donglin Yen Shue discovered to her great surprise that Genshin's back seemed abnormally tall and straight. She could actually sense an indomitable aura from his back. However, Donglin Yen Shue secretly shook her head soon afterwards. She dismissed the extremely laughable and childish thoughts in her head. She had no idea whether to laugh or cry over this feeling. After all, the person sitting before her was a low-level radiant Saint Master who was nowhere near as powerful as her. What's the point of being afraid? I've been through many situations that are even more despairing than what you're facing right now. In my eyes, the danger you face right now really is nothing, Jianqin said calmly. He remained seated on the tree without moving as he stared ahead. A sliver of surprise appeared in Donglin Yen Shue's eyes when she saw Jianqin's composure that even the 8 divine king saints did not possess. She could not help but study Jianqin properly. At that moment, she suddenly discovered that she had never truly seen through Jianqin. However, as soon as she thought about how Jianqin had approached her with ulterior motives, Donglin Yen Shue felt extremely repulsed. Changyang, now that we're in dire straits, do you regret becoming my 9th protector very much? Donglin Yen Shue asked. Her voice was very soft and her tone was very calm. However, it still possessed a sliver of coldness. I don't regret it because I want to enter the Tower of Radiance and become the retainer of the 5 candidates. That's the only choice, Jianqin said. His voice was very calm, and it was completely emotionless. Donglin Yen Shue frowned. Just when she wanted to ask why Jianqin had to go through the Vice Leader's medallion to enter the Tower of Radiance directly, Jianqin glanced in the direction of the 8 divine king saints and said, They've already finished their discussion. Let's go and see what they've decided. With that, Jianqin slowly floated down from the tree and made his way towards the 8 protectors. As a result, Donglin Yen Shue could only swallow her words. Author's note, that's all for today's update. Moreover, Shangguan Mu, Er's picture provided by a reader has been posted on Xiaoyao's official account. It really is very beautiful and close, so it has received the approval of many readers. To those who want to see it, please follow Xiaoyao's official account on WeChat, Xinqing Xiaoyao 110, or you can directly search for the pseudonym Xinqing Xiaoyao. Once you follow him, you'll be able to find the reply historical information. Moreover, there are pictures of various characters posted in the past. Chapter 2367. Have you made up your minds? Jianqin arrived before the 8 protectors and glanced past them as he asked calmly. The 8 radiant divine king looked at each other and seemed rather dispirited. They said, We've already made up our minds. We all believe that we should run as far away as possible. The world of moon and star is so large that even Elder Hitian's soul can only envelop a small portion of it. No matter how powerful Aoyama is, he's only a divine king. We don't believe that he can scour the entire world of moon and star in just a year. We only need to stay here for a year. A year later, when the world of moon and star opens again, the Sacred Hall will definitely send powerful elders to search the entire world of moon and star. Those elders will definitely find us. This might be our only chance at survival. If that's the case, let's move quickly, said Jianqin. This time he did not say anything. If Elder Hitian was still present, the Radiant Divine King would still have the ability to contend against Aoyama. However, Elder Hitian was dead now. Even if all the protectors of the 5 groups worked together, they would not be Aoyama's opponent. They had already lost their only chance at contending against Aoyama. Running far away and hiding was indeed the only option for the Radiant Divine King. Afterwards, everyone continued on their way. Jianqin and Donglin Yen Shue moved slowly due to their weaker strength. As a result, they were enveloped by a layer of light from the protectors, allowing them to travel with them. Because of that, the speed at which they were traveling was greatly increased. Donglin Yen Shue had already given up on the mission of collecting radiant origin pearls. Aoyama's arrival had completely disrupted their mission. At the same time, the 4 groups led by Gongzheng Xanbin, and Shurda made the same decision as Donglin Yenshua in the world of moon and star. The 4 teams split up and fled in 4 different directions. Aoyama's name was definitely a terrifying nightmare in the eyes of all the divine kings of the Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, when they learnt that Aoyama had also entered the world of moon and star, the divine kings of Radiant St. Hall became utterly terrified. The only thought left in their heads was to flee far away and avoid Aoyama's search. None of them dared to think about fighting against Aoyama. Elder Hitian has a way to communicate with the outside world. Something so big has happened in the world of moon and star. I'm sure Elder Hitian has already reported it to the sacred hall in the outside world. All we need to do is carefully hide. The sacred hall will naturally send experts to kill Aoyama. A middle-aged divine king of Radiant St. Hall who belonged to Shurda's group said, although he said that his face was still filled with great unease. When Elder Hitian fought with Aoyama, all of them chose to flee as quickly as possible. They did not dare to approach him at all. As a result, apart from Jianqin, no one in the world of moon and star knew that Elder Hitian was already dead. Elder Hitian did indeed possess a way to communicate with the outside world, but as the world of moon and star was of a high grade, the boundaries were extremely tough. He needed to activate the formation cast down in order to communicate with the outside world. However, Elder Hitian did not have the time to activate the formation when he was fighting Aoyama. As a result, the news that happened in the world of moon and star after Elder Hitian's death did not spread to the outside world like all the Radiant God Kings had hoped. The outside world had no idea what had happened in the world of moon and star at all. The 9 divine king of Radiant St. Hall frantically fled with Shurda. All of them pushed their speed to the limit. However, at this moment, a powerful presence suddenly appeared in the distance. It approached their group at an extremely terrifying speed. Sensing the presence, the 9 divine king of Radiant St. Hall all paled. They all cried out in fear. It's not Elder Hitian. It's Aoyama. Oh no, Aoyama has caught up. Why don't I see Elder Hitian? Has Elder Hitian already been defeated? Run, run. The 9 protectors of Shurda all paled. The group of 10 that had originally gathered together fell into chaos at this moment. 4 of them broke away from the group and fled in 4 different directions in panic. The actions of the 4 people were like a fuse, causing the other protectors to abandon Shurda and flee in all directions. In their opinion, they might have a better chance of survival if they did that. Shurda was a short little fatty. He looked to be only 17 or 18 years old, but in reality he had already cultivated for several hundred years. When he saw his 9 protectors leave one after another, his chubby round face instantly turned extremely ugly. In the distance, Aoyama gradually appeared. He radiated with a surging presence as he strolled through the air, directly making his way over. He seemed like he was taking a leisurely stroll, but he crossed 1,000 kilometers with each step. He arrived before Shurda in a single instance. Which one of the 5 candidates are you? Aoyama hovered in the air as he stared at Shurda coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. I'm Shurda. Shurda's chubby face was filled with fear as he stammered out. Shurda? Very good, you can die now. Killing intent flashed through Aoyama's eyes as he extended a finger towards Shurda's forehead. Spurt! A finger-sized, bloody hole immediately appeared between Shurda's eyebrows as he collapsed powerlessly. Shurda, one of the 5 candidates, had died in an instant. However, Aoyama acted like he had just done something insignificant. He looked in the direction that the 9 divine king of light had fled in. He sneered. Do you think you can escape just like that? You underestimate me, Aoyama. Far too much. This time, no matter how far you flee or how well hidden you are, all the hallowed Saint Masters who have entered the world of moon and star will die in the end. This time, I, Aoyama, will make it so that the Radiant Saint Hall has no chosen saint. With that, Aoyama pursued the 9 divine king of light who had scattered. Before long, Aoyama caught up to the 9 divine king of light who were responsible for protecting Shurda. Without any exception, all of them were mercilessly slain by Aoyama. Before Aoyama, who could rival the primordial realm or even kill primordial realm experts, The radiant divine king of light, who only had mid-7-colored soul cores, were unable to put up any resistance at all. After slaughtering Shurda's group, Aoyama stood where he was and closed his eyes. He used a secret technique to sense the surroundings, silently. A few seconds later, Aoyama opened his eyes. He looked to the left and smiled coldly. I found the second group. With that, Aoyama turned into a blur and shot off with lightning-like speed towards the second group. The second group he had found happened to be the group led by Donglin Yen-shui. When Aoyama pursued Shurda's group, he had unintentionally closed the distance between him and Donglin Yen-shui's group. As a result, not only did Donglin Yen-shui's group fail to distance themselves from Aoyama, but they instead became one of the 4 remaining groups. Chapter 2368. Jianshin's face suddenly changed as he hurried along with the protectors. As Aoyama chased after them, he did not try to hide himself at all. Instead, he gave off a surging presence that was extremely eye-catching, allowing Jianshin to sense his location from very far away. At this moment, Jianshin could sense that Aoyama was heading in their direction. He moved extremely quickly. Even though the 8 radiant god kings beside him traveled as quickly as they could, they were still far too slow compared to Qingshan. We're in trouble now. Jianshin's face finally became rather ugly. He did not fear Aoyama, but he could not reveal his strength right now. Jianshin's face sank. The light in his eyes flickered as he struggled to come up with a plan. Oh no! Aoyama has caught up! Before long, Aoyama entered the range of the divine king's senses as well. The surging presence he gave off that was different from Elder He-Tion's immediately allowed the divine king to determine his identity. Their faces all changed drastically. He's caught up. He's caught up! Run, run! The 8 divine kings' faces became extremely pale as they cried out in fear. The shadow of death enveloped them as great fear filled their hearts. They could no longer care about their mission of protecting the candidates. As a result, the 8 radiant god kings acted like Shurda's 9 protectors, abandoning Donglin Yen-shui and Jianshin and fleeing in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the 8 protectors around Donglin Yen-shui and Jianshin completely vanished, leaving behind only Jianshin and Donglin Yen-shui. Donglin Yen-shui's complexion became extremely horrible. Her delicate face paled as she stared at the 8 protectors who had vanished. She felt helpless inside. Jianshin also watched the 8 protectors flee by themselves with an ugly expression. Afterward, he arrived before Donglin Yen-shui and said sternly, "We can't stay here. Let's go." He could already sense that Aoyama was getting closer and closer to them. Aoyama's target should be me. He should be coming for us, 5 candidates. Changyang, don't worry about me. Go. Donglin Yen-shui was sorrowful. Her eyes were filled with despair. She did not hold any hopes of surviving against Aoyama, who could even kill primordial realm experts. Let's go. Jianshin frowned. Afterwards, he called out and grabbed Donglin Yen-shui's hand without saying anything else, shooting towards the dense forest in the distance. Everyone who entered the world of moon and star could die, but nothing could happen to Donglin Yen-shui, as she was directly related to whether he could enter the Tower of Radiance or not. Donglin Yen-shui's hand was warm and smooth, but Jianshin did not care about that at all. He held Donglin Yen-shui's soft hand tightly and shot off into the distance. When Donglin Yen-shui sensed that Jianshin had already grabbed her hand, she could not help but tremble slightly. Her heart immediately churned. Although she had been cultivating for a long time, she had never had such intimate physical contact with any man since she was young. Donglin Yen-shui glanced at Jianshin to the side slightly. When she discovered that Jianshin was completely focused on fleeing and did not take advantage of her at all, she gradually calmed down. At the very least, he didn't flee alone like the other protectors, thought Donglin Yen. Donglin Yen-shui thought. Her opinion of Jianshin could not help but change slightly. She did not reject Jianshin's action of holding her hand. Suddenly, Jianqin, who was fleeing with Donglin Yenshua's hand, stopped with an ugly expression. He said sternly, "As expected, Qingshan really is coming for us." At this moment, even Donglin Yenshue could sense Aoyama's presence. He did not chase after the 8 protectors. Instead, he directly made his way towards her. "His target is me. Run before he gets here. Get as far away as you can." Donglin Yenshue broke free from Jianqin's hand and said gloomily, "Ha ha ha, if you want to escape from me, Aoyama, with your strength, then you're underestimating me, Aoyama." With that, Aoyama's laughter rang out. A black speck, even smaller than an ant, appeared in the distant horizon. However, in the next moment, the black speck crossed a huge distance and appeared before Donglin Yenshue and Jianqin. It turned into Aoyama. Jianqin studied Aoyama. He had heard about Aoyama long ago. He was known as the strongest divine king in the saints' world. Moreover, Aoyama was an existence who cultivated both radiant saint force and martial soul force like him. Jianqin seemed composed before Aoyama, but Donglin Yenshue was in despair. 4-colored, primal core cultivation. You should be one of the candidates, right? Tell me your name. Aoyama hovered 3 meters above the ground with his hands behind his back. He looked down at Donglin Yenshue and spoke coldly. Donglin Yenshue did not reply. She gritted her teeth and took out a formation disc from her space ring, throwing it to the ground. Immediately, a powerful barrier of energy rose up, enveloping her and Jianqin in a semicircle. This was a defensive formation disc. It was of a high grade and could easily block attacks from Divine King experts. It could even block an attack from a Primordial Realm expert once. The seniors of the Donglin clan had given it to Donglin Yenshue before she entered the world of Moon and Star. It was her greatest life-saving trump card. Jianqin studied the formation disc and immediately determined that it could only block a single attack from Aoyama. It's fine if you don't want to say it. You should be Donglin Yenshue as the only woman among the 5 candidates, right? Aoyama looked at what Donglin Yenshue did indifferently. He did not stop her. In the next moment, killing intent flashed through his eyes, and he said coldly, "Since I know who you are, you can follow in Shurda's footsteps." With that, Aoyama extended a finger towards Donglin Yenshue. Immediately, a powerful streak of energy shot out from Aoyama's fingertip. It struck Donglin Yenshue's barrier with terrifying power that caused space to tremble. Martial soul force. A gleam of light flashed through Jianqin's eyes the moment Aoyama struck out. At that moment, he could clearly sense the existence of martial soul force. Moreover, it was martial soul force that was countless times more powerful than the martial soul force he possessed. Jianqin immediately became eager. At that moment, he suddenly desired a battle with Aoyama very much. He wanted to understand the mysteries of martial soul force from Aoyama. Bang! Chapter 2369. Even though the energy had been weakened by the formation, making it extremely weak, it was still extremely terrifying to Donglin Yenshue, who was only a deity. Blood sprayed from Donglin Yenshue's mouth as she immediately became sheet white. She was heavily injured. At the same time, her soul was affected by the martial soul force. Extremely weak strands of martial soul force wormed their way into her soul and heavily injured it. Donglin Yenshue only felt an extremely intense pain in her head. In the next moment, she lost consciousness and fainted. She's actually still alive. Aoyama was cold. He had already extended his finger a second time. It also turned into a powerful streak of energy, shooting towards Donglin Yenshue with terrifying power that could distort space. Jianqin had been paying attention to Donglin Yenshue's situation at all times. The moment Donglin Yenshue collapsed, he grabbed her by the shoulders. His eyes immediately lit up when he saw that Donglin Yenshue had already fainted. At the same time, space distorted slightly as a powerful pulse of energy attacked from up ahead. Aoyama had extended his finger a second time, shooting over with lightning speed. Jianqin did not even glance at Aoyama's second attack. He wrapped an arm around Donglin Yanshue's shoulders and turned around, facing Aoyama with his back. He protected Donglin Yanshue with his chest as he extended his right hand behind him as well. Immediately, sharp laws of the sword descended, gathering at the tip of Jianqin's finger in a single instance. It suddenly shot out as a dazzling strand of sword chi. This sword aura appeared to be only the size of a finger. However, it was incomparably powerful. When the sword aura broke through the air, it emitted waves of sharp whistling sounds, causing the surrounding space to distort intensely. Faintly, it appeared as though many cracks were being formed in the void. With Donglin Yanshue unconscious and the radiant divine king fleeing in all directions, Jianqin finally found an opportunity to strike. The sharp sword chi collided with a streak of energy with martial soul force, erupting with a great boom. The two completely different laws both shattered after the collision, causing powerful ripples of energy to wreak havoc in all directions. Their attacks were terrifying and powerful. They had completely surpassed the level of Divine King, causing the ground to crack and space to distort. Even the space there had almost shattered. Jianqin used his body to protect the unconscious Donglin Yanshue. As he circulated his chaotic force, he pushed its defenses to the limit. His feet seemed to be rooted to the ground, allowing him to remain where he was under the violent ripples of energy. He was as immovable as a mountain. On the other side, the azure-robed Qing Shan hovered in the air. There seemed to be a formless energy in front of him, making the incoming shockwaves unable to get close to him at all. At this moment, his eyes shone with scorching light. He stared at Jianqin with shock, surprise, and disbelief. He could not help but cry out the laws of the sword. Aoyama had discovered Jianqin from very far away with the senses of his soul. However, Jianqin only had a one-colored soul core back then, so Aoyama did not take him seriously at all. But now Jianqin, who was clearly a radiant Saint Master in Aoyama's eyes, had suddenly displayed the power of the laws of the sword. This finally made Aoyama pay attention to Jianqin. Aoyama's eyes shone brightly as he stared at Jianqin. His gaze changed rapidly. Jianqin slowly returned to his senses as well. He stared at Aoyama calmly. But very soon, a sliver of surprise flashed through his heart. He found Aoyama's gaze to be rather strange. It was mixed with some confusion. He did not sense any killing intent from Aoyama's gaze. Instead, he saw a sliver of joy and excitement from Aoyama's rapidly changing gaze. "The senses of the soul earlier came from you?" Aoyama asked after looking at Jianqin for a while. "That's right." Jianqin did not deny it. He stared at Aoyama calmly and asked, "You want to kill Donglin Yanshue?" "I've come to the world of Moon and Star to kill the 5 candidates of the Radiant Saint Hall and all their protectors, so that the Radiant Saint Hall no longer has a chosen saint." Aoyama had already recovered his composure. He stared at Jianqin deeply as he said firmly, "Then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed because you can't kill Donglin Yanshue," Jianqin said calmly. Aoyama frowned when he heard that. He stared at Jianqin sharply and growled, "You want to protect her? You're not weak, but you're still not at the primordial realm. Do you think you have the ability?" "I do." "All right. Then let me see just how capable you are." Aoyama called out. His presence skyrocketed, surging into the sky. It caused the clouds to churn and the space there to distort. Jianqin's gaze gradually sharpened as well. He lowered his head and glanced at the unconscious Donglin Yanshue, who was bleeding from the corner of her mouth. With a thought, the laws of space revolved around her in a single instance, wrapping around Donglin Yanshue and vanishing. "The laws of space," Aoyama called out. A strange light flashed through Jianqin's eyes. He could clearly sense that Jianqin had already sent Yanshue to the center of a mountain several hundred kilometers away with the laws of space. The center of the mountain was originally the territory of a pangolin. It was an early overgod, but when Donglin Yenshua was sent there by the laws of space, the pangolin had been slashed apart by a spatial blade that had suddenly appeared. After sending Yen Shui to safety, Jianchen struck out decisively, launching an attack at Aoyama. At that moment, a supreme sword intent radiated from his body. It seemed to be endless as it gathered from all directions. Jianchen seemed to have become a supreme sword that had been stabbed into the ground. Then his body began to shine with blinding light. With a powerful sword intent that caused the space to tremble, he stabbed towards Qing Shan. This was the first time Jianchen had truly struck out after his soul had fused with chaotic force. As soon as he struck out, the might was enough to shake the surroundings. When the sword qi shot out, it ripped through space, forming black cracks of various sizes. The cold sword qi reduced the surrounding vegetation to dust and reduced the rocks to dust. Even the ground beneath his feet was shaved off layer by layer by layer from the sword qi, causing it to sink in. Although Jianchen's comprehension of the laws of the sword had not broken through, remaining at the great perfection of sword spirit, his battle prowess had increased by far too much compared to before. Moreover, Jianchen could clearly sense that not only had his usage of Radiant Saint Force become easier after his soul had changed, but his grasp over the laws of the sword had increased as well. As a result, his affinity with the laws of the sword had reached an extremely great level. Aoyama became stern. He bellowed out as terrifying energy surged through his body, gathering in his right hand. He formed a sword with his right hand and swung it down with extremely dense martial soul force. Chapter 2370. A gleam of light flashed through Jianchen's eyes. The moment Aoyama struck out, he immediately felt a powerful strand of martial soul force shoot out. It tore through his protective light like a hot knife through butter and collided with his soul. The martial soul force specialized in attacking the soul. It was a power completely different from origin energy, so it was impossible to defend against. Even with Jianchen's abilities, he was unable to find a way to block it. However, Jianchen was no ordinary cultivator either. Ignoring the fact that he had fused with a strand of chaotic force, his soul had undergone an unbelievable change. He was also an existence who could use martial soul force. As a result, when the presence of martial soul force tore through Jianchen's defenses and came in contact with his soul, Jianchen did not feel any discomfort at all. The effects of Aoyama's martial soul force on Jianchen had been reduced to a minimum. He was basically immune to it. Boom! At the same time, Jianchen turned into a sword and collided with Aoyama's finger with resplendent light, erupting with a great boom. Immediately, an even more powerful strand of martial soul force suddenly arrived. Like a huge python, it ignored all of Jianchen's defenses and struck Jianchen's soul. This strand of martial soul force was much more powerful than before. Even the souls of primordial realm experts would be severely affected by it. However, Jianchen remained the same as before. He was not affected at all. The threat that martial soul force posed to him was not as terrifying as other cultivators. However, Aoyama's attack was not just martial soul force. His finger also possessed devastating power. When the power came in contact with Jianchen's sword qi, it immediately shattered the sword qi, turning it into scattered sword qi that shot off in all directions like rain. Aoyama's finger, on the other hand, carried the remaining power and did not slow down in the slightest as it pierced towards Jianchen's chest. Jianchen's eyes narrowed. The power of Aoyama's finger was much stronger than he had imagined. However, he was not flustered at all. He calmly dealt with it. He pointed his finger at the sky, and immediately his entire aura changed. At this moment, he seemed to have become one with the heavens and the earth, transforming into the great Tao of the heavens and the earth, becoming a supreme existence that controlled the heavens and the earth. The sword qi that had already collapsed in the void and shot out like raindrops in all directions paused at this moment. It was as if they had been summoned by something. They gathered towards Jianchen at an even faster speed. In an instant, a resplendent sword light was formed above Jianshan's head. It tore through the void and mercilessly slashed towards Aoyama's finger. At this moment, Jianshan was completely using his control over the laws of the sword. Now that his strength had reached such a level, the various sword techniques he had grasped in the past were completely useless due to their grade. "You're even more powerful than I imagined," Aoyama called out. The trajectory of the finger that originally stabbed towards Jianshan's chest suddenly changed. He used two of his fingers as a sword to catch Jianshan's sword chi. He smiled strangely. "Martial soul technique, strip!" With that, a wondrous strand of martial soul force immediately shot out from Aoyama's forehead. It turned into an invisible blade that landed on Jianshan's sword chi. Jianshan's face suddenly changed. He was shocked. At that moment, he suddenly discovered that his connection with the sword chi had been severed. The strand of sword chi condensed from his laws of the sword was no longer under his control. Aoyama had stripped it of his control. Martial soul force actually has such a wondrous use. Jianshan was surprised. At this moment, the strand of sword chi condensed by Jianshan stabbed towards Jianshan under Aoyama's control. That was not all. Aoyama clenched his right hand into a fist, and terrifying energy surged from it. He punched out, smashing towards Jianshan right after the sword chi. Jianshan showed no fear. He circulated chaotic force, and the laws of strength descended. He also punched out with unimaginable force. The power of his punch had reached the limit. The space before him shattered like a mirror the moment he struck out. The origin energy in the surroundings collapsed from the punch. The moment the sword chi that Aoyama had stripped away came in contact with Jianshan's fist, it began to disperse inch by inch from the tip of the sword. Afterwards, Jianshan's fist did not slow down at all. It collided with Aoyama's fist with a terrifying force. Bang! A heavy boom rang out in the surroundings. The collision between the two of them this time was extremely terrifying. It formed a dazzling shockwave that expanded in all directions from the two of them. Wherever it passed by, everything vanished. All the mountains within a radius of 100 kilometers were reduced to ashes, and the ground caved in. Aoyama was blown away by Jianshan's punch. He flew several kilometers in the air before finally coming to a halt. His vital energy surged, and he almost lost all feeling in his right arm. He immediately stared at Jianshan in surprise and called out, "The laws of strength! You've actually grasped the laws of the sword, space, and strength at the same time, and you've reached the level of the Divine King in all three of them. No, even the laws of strength can't increase your strength to such a terrifying level. It's your body. Your body possesses extraordinary strength in the first place." Jianshan said nothing. The space around him pulsed gently, and he vanished in a single moment. He used the laws of space to perform a short-distance teleportation, appearing behind Aoyama in the blink of an eye. He brought his hands together, and an even more powerful strand of sword chi suddenly appeared between his hands. It stabbed towards Aoyama's back with the power to rip through space. Aoyama shivered inside. The strand of sword chi was so powerful that he dared not to underestimate it. Before the sword chi had even approached him, he felt like countless strands of sword chi had drifted around him, forming a dense encirclement around him. He felt piercing pain all over his body. Even the cyan gown he wore was riddled with sword scars. At that moment, he felt like he had entered a domain of the sword. Invisible strands of sword chi were everywhere. "Soul Mountain Seal!" Aoyama bellowed out. He formed a seal with his hands, and an illusionary mountain appeared above his head. It was hazy as if it was shrouded in mist. It was impossible to see clearly. However, on this mountain, there was a terrifying power that could suppress heaven and earth. The illusionary mountain rapidly descended. Its might was vast and soul-stirring, causing the space below to suddenly freeze. It crushed down towards Jianshan like a hot knife through butter. Jianshin's body sank. At that moment, he felt like a mysterious power had enveloped him, forming an unbreakable restraint. He was unable to dodge the pressure of the illusionary mountain at all. He could only endure it forcefully. Jianshin became stern. The sword chi that had stabbed towards Aoyama's back suddenly shot towards the sky. It turned into a bolt of lightning and collided with the illusionary mountain. At the same time, he condensed the laws of strength around him. He used his greatest strength to punch the sky. Bang! 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 Chapter 2371. Afterwards, Jianshin transformed into a sword. He shone with surging light as he stabbed out like a sword. At the same time, he used the laws of strength and the laws of space at the same time, controlling the power of the three laws in battle. Sword light soared into the sky outside, blooming with light that illuminated the world. Inside, he was supported by the laws of strength, making his physical strength terrifyingly strong. The laws of space increased his speed to the limit, making the power of his attack extremely shocking. He was not at the primordial realm, but the power in his strike was enough to kill primordial realm experts. Ha ha ha, nice. Aoyama showed no fear in the face of Jianshin's shocking strike. As he laughed aloud, his presence suddenly skyrocketed, and he struck out with his full strength as well. He used a secret technique and struck out with a shocking strike, causing the sky to collapse. The battle between the two of them was extremely intense. Every time they collided, every time they clashed, a deafening boom would erupt. Terrifying and violent storms of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, creating cracks in space one after another. They fought from the ground to the sky, and then from the sky to the depths of the earth. They fought as they retreated, fighting several tens of thousand kilometers away. Along the way, all the plants had been reduced to dust. Mountains collapsed one after another, vanishing one after another. They had been reduced to dust by the powerful shock waves of energy, filling the air with dust. On the ground, streaks of fiery red lava spewed out from the depths of the ground into the sky with a high temperature, illuminating the entire sky red. The attacks from Jianshin and Qingshan missed from time to time, striking the ground below and piercing several thousand kilometers into the very depths of the earth. As a result, the magma buried deep underground was no longer as calm as before. Both Jianshin and Aoyama were quite injured now that the battle had reached such a state. Their clothes were dyed with blood. Aoyama was enveloped by a milky white light. This was Radiant Saint Force. Under the envelopment of Radiant Saint Force, his wounds healed at a visible rate. He healed as he fought. Even though Jianshin did not use Radiant Saint Force to heal, the powerful regeneration of his chaotic force was fully unleashed. As a result, his rate of recovery was no slower than Aoyama's. As the two of them engaged in an intense battle, the three groups led by Jianshin, Exenbing, and Enda, as well as the protectors who had abandoned Donglin, Yanshui, and Jianshin all stopped. They raised their heads and stared in the direction of the battle between Jianshin and Aoyama from afar. The light in their eyes flickered. What's going on? Why have you all stopped? The candidate, Jianshin, called out to the protectors beside him. His face was filled with undisguised anxiety as well as some fear. This was fear towards Aoyama. Young Master Xen, they're experts fighting in the distance. The shock waves from the battle are extremely terrifying, causing the surroundings to change. Even from millions of kilometers away, we can sense it clearly, a protector beside Jianshin said in fright. One of them should be Aoyama of the martial soul lineage, but who's the other person? It doesn't matter who he is, but we can be certain that he's even more powerful than Elder Hitian. The disturbance from his battle with Aoyama is even greater than Elder Hitian's. Has the Sacred Hall received the news and sent experts over? The light in their eyes flickered, and they looked at one another. Afterwards, one of them suggested, "Since Aoyama has already been kept busy, there's no need for us to be afraid. Let's go. Let's go see who's fighting against Aoyama." Afterwards, a few of the protectors immediately flew towards where Jianchen and Aoyama were fighting. The remaining people remained behind to protect Jianchen. When they moved, and Da's group made the same arrangements. Only Xian Bin's group did not send any protectors to investigate under the insistence of the candidate. Instead, they continued to flee into the distance. The protectors who had abandoned Yanshui all turned around without any exception, approaching the battlefield in the distance. The shock waves from the battle are so intense. Aoyama must have encountered an opponent even more powerful than Elder Hitian. The Sacred Hall must have learnt about the situation in the world of moon and star and sent experts to deal with Aoyama. Aoyama can't even take care of himself right now. Let's hurry over and see if we can find an opportunity to kill Aoyama. Killing Aoyama of the martial soul lineage will be a great merit. The protectors all had their own thoughts. They no longer fled. Instead, they approached Aoyama proactively through the shockwaves from the battle. Boom! 10 million kilometers away, Jianchen and Aoyama were both blown away by the powerful recoil after their clash. When Aoyama stabilized himself, a black sword suddenly appeared in his hand with a flip of his hand. It gave off the might of a god artifact, and he called out, "Soul-slaying sword, low-quality god artifact." Even the elder of the Sacred Hall, who just died at my hands, did not have the right to make me use this sword. You, on the other hand, have the right to make me use this sword. I hope you don't disappoint me. With that, Aoyama swung his sword, sending out a pitch-black streak of sword chi towards Jianchen. After using the god artifact, Aoyama's battle prowess reached a whole new level once again. With a swing of his sword, a pitch-black crack several meters long appeared in space. Jianchen was stern. At this moment, he no longer held back. With a flip of his hand, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways suddenly appeared. As he poured in his chaotic force, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways immediately shone with resplendent starlight. Illusionary stars appeared one after another. Every time a star was condensed, the power of the 9-star sword of heavenly ways would increase. A total of 6 illusionary stars shone from the 9-star sword of heavenly ways one after another. Jianchen also swung his sword. Immediately, starlight filled the sky. It seemed like endless starlight had descended, colliding with the soul-slaying sword loudly. The clash between the two god artifacts was even more shocking. When the terrifying energy collided, a deafening boom rang out. The space where the two god artifacts collided collapsed, forming a black hole that was a meter wide. The powerful recoil and shockwave wreaked havoc, forcing Jianchen and Aoyama to stagger backwards. Aoyama's face was pale. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. But he stared at Jianchen with shining eyes. He laughed aloud, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. It really is you. Before him, Jianchen was emotionless. His eyes were cold. He knew that Aoyama had already discovered his true identity, but he was not surprised. When he made up his mind to protect Donglin Yanshui, he had already prepared himself for the consequences of having his identity exposed. The 9-star sword of heavenly ways in Jianchen's hand suddenly trembled. It shone with resplendent starlight as he glared at Aoyama. Just when he was about to continue fighting Aoyama, he suddenly frowned. He glanced around, and his gaze seemed to pierce through the obstructions of space, allowing him to see what was happening extremely far away. He had already sensed that quite a few divine King of Light were rapidly approaching him from 4 different directions. Even though they were still several million kilometers away, they would arrive before long with their speed as divine kings. As a matter of fact, their souls could even envelop this place with ease. However, the space there was filled with extremely violent storms of energy, preventing the senses of their souls from approaching. The approach of these people made Jianchen give up on continuing his battle with Aoyama. He stowed the 9-star sword of heavenly ways away and said coldly, "Aoyama, I'll fight you another day." With that, the power of the laws of space immediately pulsed where Jianchen was. In the next moment, he vanished. He had left. Jianqin used the laws of space to teleport 1,000 kilometers away. Afterwards, with a few flashes, he arrived 10,000 kilometers away as quickly as he could. He picked up the unconscious Donglin Yanxue and flew off into the distance. Aoyama hovered in the air with the soul-slaying sword in his hand. He did not stop Jianqin from leaving. His eyes were extremely bright as he watched Jianqin fly off into the distance with a strange light. He smiled and said, "I've actually encountered the 8th martial soul force expert here. However, his battle prowess is so great that it even surprises me. What a surprise! It's just a pity that he doesn't know how to use martial soul force at all." Chapter 2372. With that, Aoyama turned into an azure blur and shot through the air. He shot towards the Divine King, who approached from the surroundings with lightning-like speed. He did not seem to be worried about disturbing the Divine King at all. As he flew through the air, he gave off a powerful presence that blanketed the surroundings. In the distance, the protectors of the 4 candidates approached the battlefield with lightning speed from 4 different directions. The shockwaves from the battle between Jianqin and Aoyama were just too powerful. They had completely surpassed the Divine King's level of cultivation. As a result, the scattered Divine King all believed that the Sacred Hall had sent experts to deal with Aoyama. After all, they had already learned from the elders that the Sacred Hall had already dealt with the vicious beasts in the world of Moon and Star before they had come. Among the vicious beasts that remained, the strongest were only Divine Kings. It was impossible for existences that surpassed the Divine King's level of cultivation to appear. As a result, they immediately connected the shockwaves from the battle between the Primordial Realm experts to the Sacred Hall's reinforcements. I wonder which elder has entered the world of Moon and Star. But no matter who it is, Aoyama is done for, since the Sacred Hall already knows that Aoyama is here. The elder that has come to reinforce him definitely has the ability to kill Aoyama. There's already an elder from the Sacred Hall here. Aoyama is done for anyway. If that's the case, I have to put on a good performance before this elder. If I can be of any use, it'll be a great merit. I'll be able to earn a tremendous amount of merit. The light in the eyes of the Divine King who rushed towards the battlefield flickered as they all had their own thoughts. But very soon, one of the groups suddenly came to a halt. They stared straight ahead as surprise and doubt filled their faces. They had already sensed that a terrifying aura, so powerful that it made them tremble in fear, was approaching them at an extraordinary speed. Moreover, what made them feel even more shocked and uneasy was that they were familiar with the owner of the presence. It was Aoyama's presence. "Oh no, Aoyama is heading towards us. Where's the elder that fought Aoyama? Why can't I sense his presence anymore? The elder's presence has vanished. Oh no, run! Run!" The faces of the radiant God Kings paled in shock as they fled in the opposite direction as quickly as they could in fright. Behind them, Aoyama's eyes were cold. He sneered as he pursued them. He moved extremely quickly, crossing 1,000 kilometers in a single instance. He completely surpassed the Divine King who had erupted with their greatest speed. Very soon, he caught up to the first Divine King. He struck out decisively and mercilessly, wiping out a mid-Divine King's soul with a single strike. Afterwards, he did not stop at all. He continued in pursuit of the remaining Divine Kings. At the same time, the calm space in a mountain forest several million kilometers away suddenly rippled like water. Jianqin silently appeared there with the unconscious Donglin Yanxue in his arms. After several short-distance teleportations, Jianqin had already traveled far away from where he fought Qingshan. He held Donglin Yanxue in his arms as he stared into the distance, as if he was looking at Qingshan from afar. The light in his eyes flickered, and after a slight hesitation, he did not stay any longer. He continued off into the distance. At this moment, a pained moan rang out from Jianqin's arms. Donglin Yanxue had already woken up slowly. She opened her eyes weakly and saw Jianshan's face with a single glance. Her eyes immediately became slightly dazed. Jianshan immediately slowed down, maintaining the speed of a radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. He crossed the mountains and ran across the ground with Donglin Yanxue in his arms. He said, "You're awake." Donglin Yanxue recovered very quickly. She immediately sensed that she was in Jianshan's arms, which immediately made her blush. A smear of embarrassment appeared in her eyes. However, in the next moment, her mind suddenly shuddered. She stared around with her bright eyes and asked nervously, "Where's Aoyama? He didn't kill us. How did we escape?" Jianshan chuckled when he heard that. "We were lucky. Just when Aoyama was about to kill us, a vicious beast suddenly appeared. The vicious beast seemed to have grievances with Aoyama, so it engaged in a great battle with Aoyama. I fled with you in my arms during the chaos, so we managed to survive." Donglin Yanxue firmly believed Jianshan's explanation. She said in joy, "The vicious beast's strength should have reached the peak of the Divine King, or it would have been impossible for it to be Aoyama's opponent. How close! If it weren't for the vicious beast that suddenly appeared, we probably wouldn't have survived until now." With that, Donglin Yanxue suddenly realized that she was still in Jianshan's arms. She immediately blushed and said softly, "Changyang, let me down." Jianshan paused. He lowered his head and looked at Donglin Yanxue. He said sternly, "You're very heavily injured. You probably can't travel alone. Are you sure you want to let me down?" Donglin Yanxue was actually afraid to look into Jianshan's eyes when she was stared at by Jianshan. She nodded with a red face. "All right, but you need to know that Aoyama isn't too far away from us right now. We can't stay here any longer, just in case he catches up," said Changyang. He held Donglin Yanshue's slender waist with one hand as he steadied Donglin Yanxue and slowly placed her on the ground. Donglin Yanxue immediately became flustered when she felt Jianshan's thick and powerful arms. Her heart began to thump uncontrollably, and her face that was already red became even redder. It seemed like blood was about to ooze out of her. Donglin Yanxue struggled to stand on the ground. However, as soon as she took a small step, she could not help but cry out in pain. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. She had taken on an attack from Aoyama. Even though the attack had been blocked by the formation, less than 1/100th of its power had actually landed on Donglin Yanxue. It was still enough to heavily injure Donglin Yanxue. She could not even walk. Jianshan reacted quickly. He caught Donglin Yanxue in a single step and said, helplessly, "You can't even stand right now. You can't travel alone. Let me carry you." Donglin Yanxue avoided Jianshan's gaze. She did not dare to look at him at all. She gritted her teeth gently as she struggled inside. Chapter 2373. Compared to Donglin Yanshue's girlish shyness, Jianshan seemed extremely calm. His breathing was steady and his mind was calm. He slid his left arm under Donglin Yanshue's armpit and placed it under her shoulder blade. He placed his right hand under Donglin Yanshue's knee, and with a slight force he lifted Donglin Yanxue up again. Donglin Yanshue's body immediately stiffened. Although she had cultivated for quite some time, her mental age was equivalent to a 20-year-old girl. Just the contact of her hand with a man was enough to make her blush, let alone being carried by a man. As a result, Donglin Yanshue's face had already reddened. In particular, she basically pressed her head against Jianshan's chest when she was so close to him. She could even clearly smell the unique presence of a man from Jianshan. For a moment, Donglin Yanxue felt her head spin. She was stunned. Jianshan was calm. A pair of wings condensed from radiant saint force appeared on his back. With a flap of the wings, he flew close to the ground with Donglin Yanxue in his arms. He completely demonstrated the abilities of a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core. I hope Aoyama doesn't chase after me in the short term, or I'll probably be exposed to Donglin Yanxue. Even though a beauty was in his arms, Jianqin did not have any other thoughts. At this moment, he was slightly worried as he prayed inside. Donglin Yan Shui's success or failure was directly related to whether he could enter the Tower of Radiance or not. As a result, Donglin Yan Shui could not die in the world of moon and star. Now that Donglin Yan Shui was heavily injured, she could not even take simple actions. If Aoyama chased after her at this moment, she definitely would not be able to endure a single strike from him. Jianqin needed to step forward. However, Donglin Yan Shui had already woken up. If he revealed his strength before Donglin Yan Shui, his identity would definitely be exposed. As a result, Jianqin worried about Aoyama chasing after them the most at this moment. Donglin Yan Shui gradually returned to normal in Jianqin's arms. Even though she was very reluctant, she knew that she could not change anything. As a result, she could only slowly accept the fact that she was in Jianqin's arms. Donglin Yan Shui studied Jianqin secretly. When she discovered that Jianqin only cared about traveling and had no other thoughts, her opinion of Jianqin could not help but change slightly once again. Although he became my protector because he wanted to get close to me with ulterior motives, at the very least, he didn't abandon me in a moment of life and death like the other 8 protectors. When I was injured by Qingshan and fell unconscious, he didn't abandon me and flee by himself either. Donglin Yanshua thought. Unknowingly, Jianqin had become more and more pleasing to the eye. Even she did not realize that Jianqin had become more and more pleasing to the eye. Even when she was in Jianqin's arms, she did not feel much resistance from the bottom of her heart. At this moment, Donglin Yan Shui sniffed Jianqin's chest as hard as she could. She immediately became surprised and thought, "There's the smell of blood." Afterwards, for some reason, Donglin Yan Shui actually tore open Jianqin's clothes. Immediately, a few vicious wounds appeared. Jianqin had naturally suffered a few wounds from his battle with Aoyama. A portion of the wounds had completely healed under the powerful regeneration of the chaotic body, without leaving behind any scars at all. However, there were still a few more severe wounds that had not healed completely due to the short amount of time that had passed. Although he had changed into a set of clean clothes as soon as possible, he did not manage to wash off the smell of blood on him. As a result, Donglin Yan Shui smelled it and found it immediately. "You're injured." Donglin Yan Shui's face changed when she saw the vicious wounds. "It's just some small wounds. It's nothing." Jianqin did not care at all. However, he grumbled inside. He had never thought that Donglin Yan Shui would suddenly change her mind, boldly tearing open his clothes and exposing his wounds. The Donglin Yan Shui he knew was not like this. "Does it hurt?" Donglin Yan Shui looked at the wounds with mixed feelings and asked softly. He was clearly injured, yet he had to act like nothing was wrong, taking her along with him. At that moment, Donglin Yan Shui's heartstrings seemed to have been tugged. Jianqin came to a halt. He lowered his head and stared at Donglin Yan Shui strangely. Since when had Donglin Yan Shui become so concerned about him? Sensing Jianqin's strange gaze, Donglin Yan Shui also realized that she had been overly concerned. She blushed slightly and covered up Jianqin's wounds again. She called out gently, "What are you standing there for? Let's hurry up. If Aoyama catches up, none of us will survive." A while later, Donglin Yan Shui could not help but say, "Why don't we stop for a while and heal your wounds first, so that they don't worsen?" "It's just a flesh wound. It's nothing." The two of them remained silent along the way. Jianqin carried Donglin Yan Shui for 3 days and 3 nights as fast as he could with his one-colored soul core. Only then did he act like he was exhausted and find an extremely well-hidden cave to stop. After all, the strength of a one-colored soul core was extremely limited. Traveling at such a high speed for 3 days and 3 nights had already reached the limits of what a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core could endure. If he continued on, it would be very easy for him to be exposed so he needed to stop. The gloomy cave was silent. A fist-sized luminous pearl embedded in the ceiling provided some light. It was possible to make out Jianqin and Donglin Yanshui through the dim light. The two of them sat separately. Jianqin had already closed his eyes to recover, using Radiant Saint Force to heal his wounds. In reality, he had already made a full recovery from his wounds thanks to the regeneration of the chaotic body. He only continued to use Radiant Saint Force to heal for Donglin Yanshui so that he could find a reasonable explanation for his wounds. Before him, Donglin Yanshui sat on the ground with her arms around her knees. She looked at Jianqin with mixed feelings. She stared at Jianqin like that until Jianqin finished recovering. "You've recovered?" Jianqin opened his eyes and looked at Donglin Yanshui. He asked even though he already knew the answer. Donglin Yanshui was gloomy. She said helplessly, "My soul has been injured by martial soul force, so I can't use Radiant Saint Force. There's even a sliver of martial soul force left in me. Although I've suppressed it with pills, it's also stopped my wounds from healing. As long as the martial soul force remains, I won't be able to recover." Chapter 2374. In other words, I'll have to carry you for the next few days. Jianqin stared at Donglin Yanshui as if he was smiling when he heard that. He naturally knew about Donglin Yanshui's injuries. When she was injured by Aoyama, there was indeed a sliver of martial soul force within her, preventing her from recovering. Although he was completely capable of purging the sliver of martial soul force within Donglin Yanshui with his ability, he would never do that because he would face the risk of being exposed if he did. After all, he was playing the role of a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. It was impossible for a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core to possess such an ability. Donglin Yanshui blushed slightly when she heard Jianqin's teasing. She lowered her head and remained silent. She also understood that as long as she did not recover, she would not be able to travel alone. She really would have to rely on Jianqin for a very long time in the world of moon and star. After a moment of silence, Donglin Yanshui said gently, "Elder Hetion's whereabouts are unknown. He's probably encountered a mishap. The current world of moon and star has become a place where Aoyama can do whatever he wants. As a result, we'll probably be hunted down by Aoyama in the next few days. With our strength, we'll definitely be doomed if Aoyama finds us. The world of moon and star has only just opened. Unless the elders of the Sacred Hall learn about the situation in the world of moon and star, they won't be able to make the world of moon and star open earlier. Otherwise, we'll have to wait a year. I wonder if the two of us can last until then." Donglin Yanshui sighed gently. Her face was filled with worry. Her current situation had already become a hopeless situation in her eyes. She basically could not see any hope of escaping. The trip to the realm of moon and star should have been a very safe one for her as a candidate. After all, she had the protection of the 9 great Tao protectors. Even if she were to encounter extremely powerful ferocious beasts, she would be able to easily kill them. Even if she were to encounter extremely powerful ferocious beasts, she would still be able to escape unscathed. All she needed to do was to focus on searching for the Holy Light Origin Pearls. However, Aoyama's sudden intrusion had completely disrupted this year's trial. Not only did her 8 guardians leave her and flee for their lives, even she, as one of the candidates, had to constantly face the nightmare of being killed by Aoyama. In addition, there were many ferocious beasts hiding in various places within the realm of moon and star. Some of the more powerful ones even possessed the battle prowess of a peak divine king. Beside her was Changyang, who only had a one-colored soul core. With such a weak cultivation, he was basically useless in the world of moon and star. He could not even deal with a single vicious beast that appeared, which made Donglin Yanshui despair. "Don't be so pessimistic. Aren't we still alive and well right now?" Jianqin comforted her. He sighed inside when he saw Donglin Yanshui's despair. He continued, "Don't worry. The other hallowed Saint Masters who have entered the world of moon and star this time might die, but we will definitely leave here alive." Jianshin's comforting words were clearly useless. Dong Lin Yen Shui did not treat his words with any importance at all. What use could a radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core be in the world of moon and star? Jianshin and Donglin Yen Shui did not stay for long. Very soon, he continued on his way with Donglin Yen Shui in his arms. He condensed a pair of radiant wings and flew towards the depths of the world of moon and star at the limit of his speed with a one-colored soul core. Along the way, Jianshin sensed the presences of many vicious beasts. Basically, all of them possessed the battle prowess of godhood. There were very few below godhood. Under Jianshin's deliberate actions, he calmly avoided all the vicious beasts he came across along the way. As a matter of fact, he even expanded the senses of his soul from time to monitor the movements of the vicious beasts in order to ensure that he would not be disturbed by a single vicious beast along the way. The senses of his soul were so powerful that they completely surpassed all the divine king that had entered the world of moon and star. As a result, all the vicious beasts in the world of moon and star were unable to hide from his senses, including the peak divine king existences. As a result, Jianshin did not come across a single vicious beast as he carried Donglin Yen Shui along the way. There's another radiant origin pearl. This is the 6th radiant origin pearl I've come across. It's just a pity that these radiant origin pearls are protected by vicious beasts. Even the weakest one possesses the battle prowess of an overgod, so it's difficult to collect them under Donglin Yen Shui's watch. Jianshin glanced to his left casually. A radiant origin pearl was placed in a gloomy cave 100 kilometers in that direction. A huge ape that stood 10 meters tall played around with a resplendent radiant origin pearl. At this moment, Jianshin suddenly came to a halt. He stared ahead with shining eyes as he gradually became stern. A dense, white mist that connected the sky and earth appeared on the distant horizon. At this moment, the dense, white mist expanded towards Jianshin's location extremely quickly. The white mist surged, completely connecting with the sky and earth. It seemed to have become a boundless curtain. It was strange, like a group of ghosts silently moving over. At the same time, the roars of beasts suddenly rang out in Jianshin's surroundings. The roars were filled with fear and great unease. The senses of Jianshin's soul burst out of his body and enveloped a range of several million kilometers in a single instance. He could clearly see vicious beasts constantly roar out in fear. They all left their territories and fled in the opposite direction of the white mist. Even the huge ape that played around with the radiant origin pearl 100 kilometers away from Jianshin roared out. It tossed aside the radiant origin pearl and suddenly fled from its territory, fleeing into the distance. At this moment, Jianshin could clearly feel the ground tremble. This was caused by the huge, vicious beasts running across the ground. All the vicious beasts seemed to fear the white mist that drifted over from afar. They abandoned their territories and fled in panic. What's happening? Donglin Yen Shui also discovered that something was amiss in Jianshin's arms. She looked around before locking onto the mist in the distance. In the end, her face was filled with unease. "The white mist up ahead is extremely strange," said Jianshin. He stared at the white mist, and his face gradually became stern. The senses of his soul were actually unable to penetrate the mist. What is the white mist? It can actually make so many vicious beasts uneasy. Not good. That strange white fog is approaching us. Donglin Yen Shui became extremely stern. Before they had come, the elders had never mentioned anything about the white mist, so she knew nothing about it. "Changyang, what do we do now?" Donglin Yen Shui had no idea what to do at all. Having been born into a noble family, she had grown up under the protection of her seniors. She had never faced a hopeless situation alone. Now that she was in danger, she immediately lost her mind. However, when she saw how composed Jianqin was and how he did not panic at all, for some reason, her flustered heart calmed down slightly. The light in Jianqin's eyes flickered as he stared at the white mist that blotted out the sky. He said, "The white mist is just too vast, and it moves extremely quickly. We don't have enough time to make a detour around it. As a result, there are only two paths before us. Apart from retreating and returning the way we came, we can only charge into the mist. If we return the way we came, it's extremely likely that we'll run into Aoyama again. As a result, we can only charge into the mist." Jianqin quickly made up his mind. In the next moment, he carried Donglin Yanshui and charged into the mist without looking back. P.S. Xiaoyao has posted a picture of Jianqin's junior sister by you on his public account. To those who want to see it, please follow Xiaoyao's public account on WeChat. Xinqing Xiaoyao 110. Pinyin is the pseudonym of Xiaoyao Xinqing. There's also a number for the police, or you can directly search for Xinqing Xiaoyao on the public account. To those who don't know how to follow public accounts, you can open the contact list of your public account. You'll see the menu for public accounts. You can click it, press the plus sign in the upper right corner, and directly search for the public account mentioned above. Xiaoyao's public account had already been updated with many pictures. Replying to Xan, we'll bring up the picture of the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bixing Xn. Replying to Mo Tianyin, will reveal the Empyrean demon Lord's true appearance. There are even more pictures of other characters. They are all in historical information. To those who don't know how to find historical information, you can just reply to historical information. Chapter 2375. Coincidentally, just when Jianqin charged into the mist with Donglin Yanshui, the mist gradually slowed down before completely stopping. It did not expand any further. Afterwards, the strange mist that seemed to have fused with the surroundings gradually thinned out. It became fainter and fainter. It was even possible to vaguely make out the scenery within the mist. Finally, after around a minute, the strange mist that had appeared silently completely vanished from the world of moon and star, allowing the surroundings to clear up again. However, strangely, Jianqin and Donglin Yanshui had vanished after charging into the mist. They had completely vanished. Jianqin experienced a strange feeling the moment he stepped into the mist. He felt like he had left the world of moon and star and entered another world. Of course, this feeling only lingered for a split second before he cast it to the back of his head. He began to study the mist instead. Jianqin's gaze became extremely sharp. At that moment, his eyes were like lanterns that shone brightly as he scanned the surroundings. However, he discovered very soon that he was unable to see through the mist with his eyes. The layer of mist was extremely strange. It seemed to contain a mysterious power. Even with Jianqin's eyesight, he struggled to see more than a meter away. After all, he could clearly see everything within 1,000,000 kilometers with his eyes alone in the world of moon and star. However, in this place, the distance he could see was no more than 1 meter. Not only that, even his divine sense was completely useless in this fog. Once it left his body, it would lose all its effects. At this moment, it was no exaggeration to describe Jianqin's situation as that of a blind man. "Changyang, I can't see anything here." At this moment, Donglin Yanshui's slightly flustered and uneasy voice rang out. Jianqin immediately felt a strange sensation from his neck. Donglin Yanshui's arms had already wrapped around his neck tightly. Even through Donglin Yanshui's hands, Jianqin could clearly sense Donglin Yanshui's deep unease. "There's something strange about the mist." "I can't see anything either," Jianqin said calmly. He had become vigilant long ago. Since the appearance of the mist could make all the vicious beasts in the world of moon and star uneasy, it meant that the mist was definitely not as peaceful as it seemed on the surface. There was definitely some fatal danger hidden within. However, Jianqin showed no fear. With his strength, There were very few existences that could pose a threat to him in the world of moon and star. Even if he really did come across some insurmountable danger, he still had the Inata Tower as his final trump card. Jianqin carried Donglin Yanshui as he advanced through the mist in a straight line. He had no sense of time or direction. He had even lost his sense of distance. He had no idea how long he had traveled through the mist, nor did he know how far he had traveled. The expected danger did not appear. His journey was extraordinarily smooth and peaceful. At this moment, a faint, azure light suddenly appeared in the white mist before Jianqin. Jianqin's eyes immediately narrowed. The azure light was so eye-catching and bright in the snow-white mist that it immediately attracted his attention. Jianqin hesitated slightly before speeding up. He flew in the direction of the azure light. As Jianqin rapidly approached it, the azure light became more and more dazzling. At that moment, it seemed like a lamp in the darkness, guiding Jianqin. In the end, Jianqin charged out of the mist under the guidance of the azure light. His vision immediately cleared up. In front of him was a majestic bronze divine hall that was filled with the presence of mulberry granaries. It stood there silently like a primordial beast from the primordial times. The entire divine hall was filled with the presence of time as if it had existed for countless years. This bronze divine hall was situated in the middle of the dense fog. The green light emitted from its body seemed to carry a mysterious force that dispersed the surrounding fog. I never thought that there would be a place like this hidden in the world of moon and star. Jianqin stared at the divine hall in a daze. After a while of thought, he asked, Donglin Yanshui, "You possess an extraordinary status in the Radiant Saint Hall. Do you know anything about this bronze divine hall?" He did not receive a reply to his question. When he lowered his head, he discovered that Donglin Yanshui's eyes were tightly shut. She had already fainted at some point in time. Jianqin raised his head and looked at the bronze divine hall before looking at the churning mist behind him. He frowned slightly. If he returned the way he had come, he would probably become lost in the mist. This was because he had no sense of direction at all in the strange mist. He would not be able to find his way out at all. As a result, he could only continue onwards. After making up his mind, Jianqin immediately carried the unconscious Donglin Yanshui and continued onwards. He approached the bronze divine hall. When he climbed up the long stairs of the divine hall and stood in front of the 1,000-foot-tall door, the tightly shut door of the divine hall actually slowly opened with a series of low rumbles. Immediately, a desolate and ancient aura turned into a cool gust of wind that surged out of the bronze divine hall. Jianqin could not help but close his eyes. He was completely submerged in it. Under the cleansing of the presence, he felt like he had been through countless years, as if countless years had passed in a single instant. A while later, when he opened his eyes again and looked at the bronze divine hall with its door open, his gaze immediately deepened. The mysterious bronze divine hall that had existed for who knows how long had actually opened its door for him. He had already realized that it was not a coincidence that he had come here. Instead, the master of the bronze divine hall had purposefully done so. Jianqin stood before the entrance of the bronze divine hall. After a moment of hesitation, he stepped in decisively. Boom! After he entered the divine bronze palace, the door of the divine bronze palace closed with a dull rumble. Jianqin stood within the divine hall with Donglin Yanshui in his arms. He calmly said to the empty hall, "Senior, please show yourself. Why have you led me here?" With that, azure light gathered before Jianqin, slowly condensing into the figure of an old man. His body was illusionary, completely condensed from light. He did not possess a physical body. Chapter 2376. Jianqin was overjoyed by the awakening of the sword spirits. Ever since he had helped Mo Tianyun's original body break free and fuse the twin swords, the sword spirits had fallen into a slumber due to exhaustion. No matter how he called out to them, there was no response. At this moment, the slumbering sword spirits had finally begun to awaken. which made Jianqin extremely happy. However, at the same time, he realized that the old man before him was probably not as simple as he seemed. He could vaguely sense that the sword spirits had awakened from their slumber because of this old man. At this moment, the sword spirits had already appeared above Jianqin's head. They had turned into a pair of illusionary young men, completely condensed from light. The man was handsome, while the woman was beautiful. They seemed like a perfect match. They stared at the old man, condensed from azure light, as they gradually became stern. They called out, "Primeval Chi." I never thought we'd be able to see a spirit condensed from a sliver of primeval Chi. Jianqin was surprised when he heard that. He could not help but carefully study the old man. Even though he did not really understand what primeval Chi meant, he could vaguely sense that the old man was probably an existence similar to the sword spirits. The old man, condensed from azure light, stared at the sword spirits with mixed feelings. He sighed, "A spirit condensed from yin and yang qi. I never thought that I'd be able to meet an existence similar to me in this cursed land after all these years. However, you seem to be extremely weak. Senior, you're the hall spirit of this divine hall?" Jianqin could not help but ask out of curiosity when he heard that. The old man looked at Jianqin and nodded. "You've guessed correctly. I am the hall spirit of this divine hall." "Then may I ask who the master of this divine hall is?" Jianqin continued to ask. The old man sighed softly when he heard this. There was a hint of loneliness on his face as he said, dejectedly, "Master has already perished in the annals of history. He isn't a person of this epoch." A gleam of light flashed through the sword spirit's eyes when they heard that. They called out, "You were born in the previous aeon." The old man shook his head again. "More accurately speaking, I was born in the aeon before the aeon before that." "The aeon before the aeon before that?" The sword spirits were surprised. They stared at the old man deeply and said, "Since you've already existed for so long, why haven't there been any rumors about you in the outside world?" "That's because I've been trapped here, unable to leave at all. No one knows where I am, so there's obviously no news about me in the outside world," said the old man. He stared at Jianqin and the sword spirits deeply before continuing. "You are the first living beings to see me after my master's death, as well as the first beings to set foot in this cursed land." "Cursed land? Why is this place known as the Cursed Land? And what's the mist outside? Is the mist the reason why you've been trapped?" Jianqin asked. No. The mist you see is not what's trapping me. Instead, it's a wondrous power formed from the combination of the power of the primeval divine hall and the power of the curse. As for the cursed land, it's the world of moon and star you were in before, as well as the world where the primeval divine hall was. These are all cursed places. The power of the curse was left behind by the Tao Unity Saint. It has already fused with this world, fusing with the laws. It's basically a new law that exists everywhere. It's impossible for you to sense its existence with your current level of cultivation. It's also because of the existence of the power of the curse that I'm unable to leave this place. Even the former territory of my master, the Saint of Grand Clarity, has been severely damaged. The world of Grand Clarity is the current world of moon and star. The old man said slowly. So the world of moon and star used to be called the world of Grand Clarity. Oh, right. Since the mist is the power of the primeval divine hall and you're the artifact spirit of the primeval divine hall, it means that the mist must be under your control. I've only come here because of your guidance. May I ask why you've brought me here? Jianqin asked. Because I can sense a droplet of essence, blood from a saint in your body. Most importantly, there's yin and yang qi in your body like mine. It's exactly because of the yin and yang qi that I've brought you here, the artifact spirit said. The essence blood of a saint? Is this the essence blood of a saint you speak of? Jianqin was doubtful. He used his finger to point at the location where the droplet of essence blood was. That's right. That's the essence blood of a saint. In my master's era, the owner of this drop of blood essence was the most powerful saint in the world. Of course, in your epic, saints might have another name, said the artifact spirit of the primeval divine hall. Jianqin finally understood with that. Saints were actually grand exalts. The curse of the Daoi saint is nowhere near as powerful as it was in the past after 2 epochs. However, if you want to remove the curse and restore my freedom, you still need 10 droplets of essence blood. If you can bring me 10 droplets of essence blood and restore my freedom, I'll offer up a strand of primeval chi. The absolute beginning chi is a kind of energy that is born together with the primal chaos. Although it is inferior to the primal chaos force in terms of level and is on the same level as your yin and yang chi, it contains its own profoundness. I believe that all of you are well aware of just how beneficial it is to all of you. Not only is it not a loss for you to exchange for 10 droplets of essence blood, but it's also a great fortune, said the artifact spirit. Only the sword spirits who existed like him were truly worthy of his attention. He did not place any importance on Jianqin at all. Even though Jianqin possessed a droplet of essence blood, he knew that Jianqin had only obtained it by chance. He only possessed a single droplet. As for a drop of a saint's blood essence that had lost quite a bit of its power, it wasn't of much use to him. As soon as the sword spirits heard that the artifact spirit was offering a strand of primeval chi as a reward, their eyes burned with desire. However, they calmed down again very soon. The desire in their eyes vanished, and they became filled with pity. They sighed gently. 10 droplets of essence, blood from grand exalts. That's just far too difficult. After all, essence blood is different from regular blood. Let alone essence blood, even regular blood from grand exalts is basically impossible to obtain unless we return to the time when our old master reigned supreme. Qing Sua sighed as well. Chapter 2377. Master, a strand of primeval chi, can allow us to surpass our former peak and take a step further, making us even more powerful, Xing said with a sliver of eagerness in her voice. There was no creature in the world that could resist the temptation of becoming even more powerful, whether it was cultivators in large numbers or innate spirits like the sword spirits. Jianqin was surprised when he heard that. The sword spirits were already extremely powerful existences when they were at their peak. When they fused their swords, they possessed devastating power. Just how heaven-defying would they be if they took a step further? The primeval chi was actually so beneficial to the sword spirits that even Jianqin was tempted. He wanted to obtain it eagerly. The sword spirits had already accepted him as their master. If they became even more powerful, it would indirectly increase his battle prowess as well. Jianqin sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He looked at the hall spirit with mixed feelings and said in thought, "Actually, there's no need to go through so much trouble if you want to remove the curse. All you need to do is ask a grand exalt on the same level as a saint, and you should be able to remove the curse easily. If you're willing, I can find a way to find a saint for you." After learning that primeval chi was of great use to the sword spirits, Jianqin began to think about how he could obtain a strand of primeval chi for the sword spirits. He did not even dare to think about obtaining 10 droplets of essence blood from grand exalts because it was impossible. As a matter of fact, he would not be able to obtain it for a very long time. Even though finding a grand exalt was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, it was much easier than finding 10 droplets of essence blood. Jianqin considered finding a grand exalt to remove the curse on the artifact spirit in exchange for a strand of primeval chi. After all, there were only a handful of grand exalts in the current saint's world. With his current strength, it would not be easy for him to see an expert like that. As a result, it was not excessive at all for him to exchange for a strand of primeval chi with these conditions. At the same time, he believed that once grand exalts learnt of the primeval divine hall's existence, those great grand exalts would definitely personally protect it given how precious it was. After all, the primeval divine hall before him was a peak god artifact that was no weaker than the twin swords. However, Jianshin's words seemed to touch the hall spirit's bottom line. The eyes of the artifact spirit immediately sharpened. It stared at Jianshin viciously and said coldly, "Brat, it's best if you don't do that, or I won't spare you, even with the protection of the yin and yang qi." Jianshin immediately frowned when he heard the hall spirit's agitated reaction and its threatening words. He stared at the old man and actually became rather confused about what the artifact spirit was planning. "Primeval, my master's method was indeed the only method that could help you break free quickly back then," the sword spirit said with displeasure. The hall spirit said coldly, "I've already thought of getting a saint to take action. If I really wanted to do that, I would have broken free long ago. Why would I still be trapped today? It's just that once a saint learns of my existence, I'll have no choice but to accept him as my master. After my master's death, I no longer want to yield to anyone, even if they're the most powerful saint in the world." Jianshin immediately revealed a strange expression when he heard that. He only felt that the primeval artifact spirit was just too unconventional. It had clearly become an artifact spirit, yet it wanted to be free. The sword spirits stared at the artifact spirit with mixed feelings and said, "But you're only an artifact spirit in the end. The mission of an artifact spirit is to fight for their masters. It's basically impossible for you to break free from the restraints of fate. Even if you can hide for a while, you won't be able to hide forever. As long as you break free and appear in the outside world, you'll be discovered by the sovereigns of the world sooner or later." "Humph, you don't need to worry about that." The artifact spirit snorted coldly. 10 droplets of essence blood in exchange for a strand of primeval qi that can make you even stronger. Are you willing or not? I know you're very weak right now, so it's impossible for you to obtain the essence blood, but your innate spirit's condensed from a strand of yin and yang qi after all. In the future, you'll have the ability to do so sooner or later. Primeval spirit, if you want 10 droplets of essence blood, you should beg our master, not us," replied the sword spirits. "Your master." The primeval spirit studied Jianshin with a sliver of disdain. "Him? I don't know why you've chosen him as your master, but I don't think he'll have the ability to find 10 droplets of essence blood for me in the future. Although there's already a drop of essence blood in his body, I can also sense that the drop of essence blood in his body was left behind by a saint from the previous epoch. It's not from this epoch. It's all due to luck that he was able to obtain this drop of essence blood. It's impossible for luck like this to accompany him forever." The artifact spirit suddenly paused when it reached there. It continued with a strange expression. "Do you mean to say that you want me to wait for your master to become a saint in the future?" Before the sword spirits could reply, the artifact spirit sneered. "If that's really what you think, then all I can say is that you're far too naive. I know better than you just how difficult it is to become a saint and how many hurdles you have to go through. In the age where my master reigned supreme, the path to becoming a saint was also known as the path of burying bones. The reason why it was called that was because every single saint walked over a pile of bones. Every single saint was formed from countless corpses, burying all the prodigies of a generation. Your master might possess some ability and be one of the prodigies of the present age. However, in the future, he might become a stepping stone for other prodigies on the path to becoming a saint. You want me to place my hopes on your master, but in my opinion, you're just making me waste my time waiting for nothing." The artifact spirit said confidently. It did not hide its disdain for Jianshin at all. Although it was only an artifact spirit, it was condensed from a strand of primeval qi after all. It possessed its own pride. Even grand exalts of the world struggled to make it yield, let alone Jianshin, who is only a divine king right now. The sword spirits were extremely angered by the artifact spirit's disdain for Jianshin. Qing Suo immediately snorted coldly. "Our master isn't as mediocre as you've described him to be. Primeval qi, Open your eyes and take a good look. Humph, you're still unconvinced? Very well. Let me see where your yin and yang chi's confidence comes from. The artifact spirit did not treat the sword spirit's words too seriously. However, it still studied Jianshan seriously. Chapter 2378. Why, I'm impossible. Impossible. This is definitely impossible. The artifact spirit of inception could not help but stagger backwards. Its face was filled with shock and extreme fear as it stared at Jianshan. Jianshan frowned when the artifact spirit of inception lost its composure. He growled, "What do you see from me?" Why? Your existence is not permitted by the world. The world can't tolerate you at all. You won't be able to escape being wiped out by the world in the end. You won't have a good ending. You won't be able to reach the end of your path of growth. The artifact spirit of inception pointed at Jianshan as it howled hysterically. Its current reaction was like it had seen something extremely terrifying from Jianshan. Even the artifact spirit of inception, who had lived for 2 eons and had followed Saint, was unable to remain composed. Jianshan frowned. He stared at the artifact spirit of inception deeply. The artifact spirit of inception's current reaction made him think of the spirit of the Inita Tower he had seen back on the Tianyuan continent. When the spirit of the Inita Tower had seen a corner of his future with its special ability, its expression had changed drastically, just like the artifact spirit of inception. It had cried out in a similar manner. "Can you tell me what you see from me? Why is my existence not permitted by the world? Why does the world want to wipe me out?" Jianshan asked once again. He was eager to learn the answer from the artifact spirit of inception. Jianshan was just far too curious about the corner of his future. At the same time, he felt deeply uneasy and worried. Just the thought of being wiped out by the world was enough to make him shiver. Jianshan struggled to calm down. Because you are taboo. Your existence shouldn't have appeared at all. As for what I see, it's a secret of the heavens. I can't tell you." The artifact spirit of inception stared at Jianshan in fear as it said in a shaken manner. At that moment, it looked at Jianshan with an extraordinarily stern gaze. It no longer looked down on him like before. Perhaps you haven't sensed any abnormalities right now, nor have you sensed any bad signs because you're still too weak right now. You're so weak that any random expert can crush you to death. As a result, you obviously won't touch the taboo. But in the future, when your strength reaches a sufficient level, you'll naturally know what you have to face in the end. At that time, you will become an enemy of the world, of the entire universe. If the world wants to wipe you out, no one can help you. Even the most powerful saints in the world won't be able to protect you. Even the yin and yang chis won't be of any use in the future. Your only fate is death. You will completely vanish from the world. That will be your final destination, the artifact spirit of inception said with an extremely heavy voice. Humph, artifact spirit of inception. It's still too early to come to a conclusion like that. Can you clearly see Master's death in that corner of the future? The artifact spirit of inception's words greatly displeased the sword spirits. Ziying immediately rebutted. No living being can avoid being targeted by the world. Even powerful saints will still die to the immeasurable calamity at the end of the great epic. They will be purged by the world, the artifact spirit of inception said with a heavy voice. Most of the saints you speak of are just ordinary people with extraordinary talent who grew up step by step. How can they be compared to Master? Ziying bellowed. Since Master has appeared, he definitely won't die. Even if he faces the annihilation of the world in the future, he'll survive. Qing Suo also swore. He was filled with confidence in Jianshan. The artifact spirit of inception fell silent. It had gradually calmed down now. It stared at Jianshan in interest as the light of wisdom flickered through its eyes. After a while, it suddenly said, "If you can find me 10 drops of the saint's blood essence and help me break the curse of the Tao Saint. Then I can change my initial thoughts for you. I will take you as my master and let you become my second master. Take me as your master and make me your second master? Jianqin was stunned by the sudden change in attitude of the artifact spirit of inception. He stared at the artifact spirit of inception strangely and chuckled. Your offer is indeed quite tempting, but I don't think it'll be of much help to me. Once I have the ability to obtain enough essence blood from Grand Exalts, you might not be of much use to me anymore. Unless you serve me as your master right now. Only then will I spare no effort to search for essence blood from Grand Exalts for you. The artifact spirit of inception shook its head. Not only can I not leave before the curse of the Tao Union Saint is removed, but I can't help you at all either. If you want me to serve you as my master, you need to give me 10 droplets of essence blood from Grand Exalts so that I can regain my freedom. And I believe that before you become a saint, the help I can provide you will far surpass the yin and yang qi. The artifact spirit of inception was filled with confidence. Afterwards, Jianqin felt the landscape before him suddenly change. He had been taken to another, gloomy space by the artifact spirit of inception. Before him, several dozen abnormally large beings sat there with their eyes closed. These living beings looked very much like humans on the outside, but in reality they weren't humans. Do you see that? They're the strongest generals that used to follow my master. Even though they've already died and their souls have dispersed, their bodies and all the power within them have been perfectly preserved under the protection of my inception force. As long as you implant new souls into them, they'll be able to fight for you immediately, the artifact spirit of inception said. How powerful are these people? Jianqin asked. He stared at the fallen generals with shining eyes. These experts were all ancient beings from 2 eons ago. Before you become a saint, these generals will be your greatest help. After all, they were once nurtured by my master, the Saint of Grand Pure One, through great effort, said the hall spirit. Jianqin was immediately interested when he heard that. His eyes burned with desire. It was not difficult to guess just how powerful the battle prowess of the generals was from what the hall spirit had said. Of course, before you find 10 droplets of essence blood for me, it's impossible for these generals to fight for you. The power of the curse from the Tao Union Saint has restrained me. Before the curse is removed, I don't have the power to awaken them, the hall spirit continued. Can a droplet of essence blood be enough for you to awaken 1 or 2 generals? Jianqin asked eagerly. If it was just 1 droplet, he could take it out right now. No, 10 droplets of essence blood, not a single droplet less, or I won't be able to remove the curse from the Tao Union Saint.